Hey, howdy guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. So in this video, we are going to see what if Harry's animagus was Primordial Elemental. So there will be another part of this video. So if you love this video and if you show enough love on this part, so I will upload another part. And don't worry, I will not host the whole video. I'm just here for the intro. So watch till end and please leave a like and please smash that like button and subscribe. So let's jump right into the video.
The first thing Harry learned about becoming an animagus was that it was not a cool, neat little trick you picked up like the disarming charm. It was a commitment. A month of hiding a mandrake leaf in your mouth. A month of swallowing your own panic every time someone tried to make you laugh. A month of pretending you didn't have a leaf pressed against your tongue while you ate, talked, and tried not to choke during History of Magic. And you had to do it all while living at Hogwarts, where every meal was a trap, every friend was a threat, and Ron Weasley's entire personality was a series of surprise jokes and sudden elbow jabs. Harry sat on the edge of his bed in the Gryffindor boys' dormitory, staring at the dark canopy above him like it was an enemy. The mandrake leaf lay on his palm like a promise. Green, veined, innocent-looking, deadly. He glanced at Ron's bed. Ron was asleep with his mouth open, snoring like a broken bellows. Seamus was muttering about exploding cauldrons. Dean had his arms folded like he was guarding a secret in his dreams. Neville was curled around his pillow, as if it could protect him from the world. Harry lifted the leaf. 1 month, he told himself. Just 1 month. His scar gave a faint, irritated twinge, like it had opinions about his life choices. Harry pushed the leaf into his mouth and tucked it under his tongue. Instantly, he tasted earth, bitter green, a strange sharpness that reminded him of the smell of greenhouse soil and thunderstorm air. He swallowed carefully. The leaf stayed. His heart hammered anyway. He slid back under his covers, staring at the darkness and listening to the castle breathe. The Dementors were out there, somewhere beyond the walls, floating shadows that sucked warmth and hope and every good thing right out of the air. Harry had faced a basilisk. He'd flown into a Quidditch match with broken bones. He'd stared down a memory of Voldemort and survived. But the Dementors? The Dementors made him feel like the world was ending, and he was the only one who could hear it. He had asked Remus Lupin for help the first time his Patronus fizzled like a dying spark. He hadn't asked directly, not in a proud teach-me way, more like a quiet, exhausted I can't do this way that escaped his mouth on a night when the wind sounded like distant screaming and the corridors felt too cold for Hogwarts. Lupin had stared at him for a long moment, eyes too old for his face. Then he'd said softly, "There are other ways to evade monsters, Harry." And that was when the secret began. Scene 1. The Shadow Lessons. Harry's first animagus lesson didn't happen in a classroom. It happened in the darkest corner of Lupin's office, where the fire was low and the curtains were drawn, even though it wasn't late. Lupin sat behind his desk with a mug of tea that smelled like something that wanted to be medicine and comfort at the same time. He didn't drink it. He just held it like it anchored him. Harry stood across from him, trying to look like he wasn't vibrating with nerves. "You know this is illegal," Lupin said. Harry swallowed around the leaf. It made the movement awkward, like his tongue was suddenly too big. Lupin watched him and sighed. "Right? You can't exactly argue with me at the moment." Harry raised his eyebrows as if to say, "I can argue. I just won't survive it." Lupin's mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was something. "I'm going to say this once," Lupin continued. "If at any point you want to stop, we stop. No pride. No guilt. This is dangerous. It's not like learning to ride a broom." Harry nodded. Lupin's gaze sharpened. "You're doing this because of the Dementors." Harry nodded again. "And because," Lupin added quietly, "you don't like feeling helpless." Harry's scar prickled faintly, as if it agreed. Lupin leaned back and looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. An animagus form is not a costume. It's a truth, something inside you that becomes visible. Harry's stomach tightened. What truth? Lupin's eyes flicked to Harry's scar just for an instant. Then he said, there will be a storm soon. We'll need it. Harry blinked. A storm? His voice came out muffled, leaf-pressed. Lupin nodded. The final stage requires very specific conditions. He hesitated, and there is someone else who will be helping. Harry's breath caught. Who? He managed. Lupin's gaze slid toward the corner of the office. For a second, Harry saw nothing but shadow. Then two eyes caught the firelight, bright, intelligent, and far too aware. A large black dog stepped forward silently, paws making no sound on the carpet. Harry's mouth went dry in an instant. Not because the dog was scary, because something deep in his chest, something ancient and instinctive, recognized it. The dog looked at him like it was seeing right through him. Harry's heart slammed against his ribs. Lupin said softly, he can't risk speaking here. Not yet. Harry stared at the dog. The dog stared back. And then, impossibly, the dog dipped its head in a gesture that felt like a bow. Harry's throat tightened around the mandrake leaf. Because he knew. He didn't know how. He didn't know why. But he knew. Padfoot, Lupin murmured like a warning and a greeting in the same breath. The dog's ears flicked. Harry felt something in the air shift. Like the room had just become guarded, protected, and terrified. Because if Sirius Black, the man the entire wizarding world said was a murderer, was standing in Lupin's office as a dog, then either the wizarding world was wrong, or Harry was about to get himself killed. The dog took a step closer. Harry didn't move. The dog's nose hovered inches from Harry's hand, sniffing like it was memorizing him. Then the dog huffed a soft breath that somehow carried a message Harry understood without words. You smell like storms and trouble. Harry's eyebrows rose. The dog's eyes narrowed as if to say, yes, exactly. Lupin cleared his throat gently. He'll be watching over you. He's very motivated to keep you alive. Harry swallowed the bitter leaf taste and stared at Sirius's dog. Motivated. That was one word for it. Sirius sat down, tail curling around his paws, posture too human to be mistaken for normal. Harry realized, suddenly, that his hands were shaking. Not from fear. From something else. From the feeling of being seen. From the impossible reality that his parents' best friend, his godfather, was here, in hiding, risking everything. Lupin's voice softened. Harry, the storm will be in 3 nights. Until then, you keep the leaf in your mouth. You do not remove it. You do not swallow it. And you definitely do not let Mr. Weasley make you laugh. Ron snored loudly as if he'd heard his name across the castle. Harry's eyes widened. Lupin's mouth twitched again. Yes, exactly. Sirius let out a quiet, dog-like sound that was suspiciously close to a laugh. Harry looked at him. Sirius's eyes glinted like moonlight. Then Lupin's expression turned serious again. When the storm comes, we'll go to the tower. Harry's skin prickled. Which tower? Lupin hesitated. Sirius's gaze flicked upward, as if picturing the castle's bones. Lupin said the highest one. Harry's stomach dipped. The astronomy tower? Lupin didn't confirm. He didn't deny. He only said, bring your cloak. And trust me. Harry nodded slowly. Inside his mouth, the mandrake leaf tasted sharper, like it was waking up. Scene 2. The night the sky came looking. 3 nights later, Hogwarts felt restless. The wind prowled the corridors like it was searching for something. The torches hissed and flared. The portraits muttered and argued, complaining about drafts and ominous weather like old relatives at a funeral. In the Gryffindor common room, the fire popped too loudly. Hermione was hunched over a book, frowning as if she could intimidate the pages into giving up their secrets. Ron was playing wizard chess with Seamus and losing loudly. Harry sat with them, pretending to be normal while the mandrake leaf pressed against his tongue like a ticking clock. Every few seconds, he glanced at the window. Outside, clouds rolled across the sky in thick, bruised layers. Lightning flickered in the distance, silent for now, like a threat holding its breath. Hermione looked up. "You've been staring at that storm for 10 minutes. Harry shrugged, as casually as a boy hiding illegal magic could manage. Ron leaned back. "Storm's brilliant, though. Maybe they'll cancel homework." Hermione shot him a look that could have frozen water. "They don't cancel homework because of weather." Ron pointed at the window. "They should." Harry's scar tingled again. Not pain. Not warning. Something else. Like the air itself was about to say his name. He stood abruptly. "I'm going to bed." Hermione blinked. "It's not even." "Just tired." Harry mumbled around the leaf and headed for the portrait hole. Ron called after him, "Don't get eaten by a Dementor." Hermione swatted Ron's shoulder. Harry didn't turn back, because the joke hit too close to the truth. He slipped into the dormitory, grabbed his invisibility cloak from his trunk, and waited until the others' breathing deepened with sleep. Then he crept out. The castle at night was a different creature. Its hallways stretched longer. Its shadows grew teeth. Every creak sounded like it belonged to someone following him. Harry moved with the cloak wrapped tight, heart thudding. At the base of a narrow staircase, a black dog stepped out of the darkness like it had been born from it. Harry froze. Sirius's eyes gleamed. The dog turned and padded up the stairs without hesitation. Harry followed. Higher and higher they climbed. The wind grew louder. The air grew colder. The storm was not approaching anymore. It was already here. At the top of the tower, the door creaked open. Lupin stood waiting, cloak drawn tight, hair blowing in a wind that shouldn't have reached inside. His eyes met Harry's. "Ready?" Lupin asked. Harry hesitated. Was he ready to become something else? Was he ready to risk whatever this could do to him? He thought of Dementors, of cold hands squeezing his heart, of his parents' screams echoing in his skull. He nodded. Lupin's face tightened like he was carrying 1,000 regrets and doing it anyway. Sirius slipped inside still in dog form, and the door shut behind them with a heavy thunk. The tower chamber was bare except for a circle drawn on the stone floor in pale chalk, layered with symbols that made Harry's eyes ache if he stared too long. A metal basin sat at the center, half filled with silvery water that shimmered as if moonlight had been dissolved into it. Near the basin lay a small glass vial and a bundle of herbs that smelled sharp and electric. Lupin stepped into the circle and gestured Harry forward. Harry swallowed, careful. He stepped in. The moment his foot crossed the chalk line, the air changed. Not temperature, not smell, pressure. Like the world leaned closer. Sirius sat just outside the circle, watching like a guard dog and a desperate friend both. Lupin crouched and lifted the phial. "This contains the potion base. The leaf has been in your mouth for a month. Your magic has adjusted to it." Harry's mouth tasted like bitter green permanence. Lupin's voice grew quieter. "When the lightning strikes, you drink. Then you focus, not on what you want to become." Harry's stomach twisted. "On what you are," Lupin finished. Harry's scar prickled hard. Lupin noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't stop. He rose, holding the phial out. Harry reached for it. The phial was cold enough to sting. Outside, thunder growled like something waking up angry. Lupin took a slow breath. "When I say now, you drink. Understood?" Harry nodded. Sirius's ears pricked. The storm outside roared louder, and lightning flashed bright enough to turn the stone walls white for an instant. Harry's heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. Lupin stared upward as if listening for the sky's timing. Then he said, sharp and urgent, "Now." Harry uncorked the phial with shaking fingers and swallowed. The liquid was icy and metallic, like drinking cold coins. It burned all the way down. The mandrake leaf in his mouth suddenly felt hot, like it had been waiting for this. Harry clenched his jaw, focusing, trying to remember every instruction Lupin had given him over whispered lessons. Breathe. Picture yourself. Feel your core. Let it fold, not break. Let the magic shift like a tide, not explode like a bomb. Outside, thunder cracked so loud the tower trembled. Lightning flashed again, closer. The air inside the circle thickened, buzzing with charge. Harry's hair lifted slightly as if pulled upward by invisible fingers. Lupin's voice was steady but tight. Focus, Harry. Focus on. Lightning struck. Not outside. Not somewhere far away. It hit the tower like a spear thrown by a god. And somehow, some impossibly wrong, impossibly perfect way, it hit Harry too. The world became white. Sound vanished. Harry felt the lightning like a hand closing around his bones. He couldn't scream. He couldn't move. He couldn't even think, because thought was too slow for what was happening. His magic surged, not like a spell, like an ocean breaking through a dam. He felt his skin, and then he didn't. He felt his blood, and then it wasn't blood. Something ripped through him, not tearing flesh, but unmaking the idea that he had ever been solid. Harry's body didn't shrink. It didn't transform into fur or feathers. It deconstructed. He became wind. He became ozone. He became the crackling taste of storm air right before lightning hits. His bones turned into a memory. His lungs became a current. His heartbeat became thunder. The tower windows exploded outward in a ring of flying glass, blown out by a force that wasn't a blast. It was Harry, expanding, escaping, becoming too big for the shape he'd been forced to wear. Lupin shouted his name, but the sound stretched thin and strange, like it was being heard underwater. Sirius barked sharp, furious, terrified. Harry wasn't in the circle anymore. Harry was everywhere inside the tower. He felt the stone walls vibrating with fear. He felt metal in the room sing with charge. He felt the moisture in the air separate into tiny, trembling particles. He felt the storm outside like a sibling calling his name. And somewhere in the middle of all that, he felt his scar. Not pain, not warning. A pulse. Like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Like something inside him recognized lightning as an old friend. Harry tried to grab onto himself. Tried to condense. Tried to remember what it meant to have hands and feet. But he was slipping, spreading, becoming the storm instead of a boy. And it was, for one terrifying, beautiful moment, easy. Being Harry Potter was heavy. Being the storm was freedom. He felt the sky outside and wanted to leap into it. He felt the world's magnetic pull and laughed without a mouth. He felt the castle's wards like ancient bones and wanted to shake them just to see if they could break. Then Lupin's voice cut through the chaos like a rope thrown into deep water. Harry, not a shout, a command, a plea. Harry clung to it instinctively. He focused on that voice like it was the only solid thing left. He remembered Lupin's hands adjusting his grip on the file. Lupin's tired eyes. Lupin's insistence. You can stop. Harry remembered Sirius's gaze, fierce, protective, heartbreaking. Harry forced himself inward. The wind screamed. The charge snapped. The air compressed. Lightning that had been inside him collapsed, coiling tighter and tighter like a serpent being forced back into a cage. Harry's awareness shrank. His shape returned painfully. He felt skin reform like a bruise. He felt bones reassemble like a puzzle slammed together too fast. He felt cold slam into him as the warmth of transformation vanished. He hit the stone floor on his knees with a gasp that tore his throat raw. He was human. He was barely human. He was shaking so hard his teeth clicked. His hair was damp with sweat and rain that hadn't existed inside the tower before. Blue light pulsed faintly beneath his skin veins, glowing like someone had poured bottled lightning into his bloodstream. Lupin was on his knees beside him, both hands gripping Harry's shoulders like he was afraid Harry would dissolve again. Sirius, still a dog, was pressed close, hackles raised, growling low at the air itself, as if the storm might try to take Harry back. Harry coughed and sucked in a ragged breath. The air tasted like metal and burnt sky. Lupin's voice was rough. "Harry, are you?" Harry tried to answer, but his words came out as a shiver. Lupin swore, quietly, very unlike a professor, and yanked off his cloak, wrapping it around Harry with shaking hands. Harry blinked up at him. Lupin's face was pale. Not tired professor pale. Terrified pale. This wasn't an animagus transformation, Lupin whispered. Harry's vision swam. Sirius nudged Harry's side urgently with his nose, as if checking he was real. Harry tried to swallow. His tongue felt wrong. The mandrake leaf, after a month of being a prisoner, was gone. Not spit out. Not swallowed. Gone like it had been consumed by the lightning. Harry stared down at his hands. His fingers trembled. Blue light flickered beneath his skin, fading and brightening with his heartbeat. Lupin stared at Harry like he was looking at a book written in a language he'd hoped was extinct. Sirius let out a low whine. Harry tried to stand. The moment he moved, the air around him crackled, faintly tiny sparks snapping across his skin. Lupin held him steady. "Don't. Not yet." Harry's mind was fog, but one thought cut through. "My wand." He reached into the cloak, fumbling clumsily, and pulled out his wand. Holly, Phoenix Feather, his anchor, his normal. Harry wrapped his fingers around it. For a split second, nothing happened. Relief surged so sharply it almost made him cry. Then the wand shuddered. Not like a living thing. Like what being forced to remember it was once a tree. The wand heated in Harry's hand so fast it hurt. Harry yelped and tried to drop it. But the wand didn't just fall. It crumbled. Right there in his palm, it turned to ash, fine, gray, weightless dust spilling through his fingers like dead snow. Harry stared, horrified, as the last intact piece snapped and vanished. Silence swallowed the tower. Even the storm outside seemed to pause, listening. Lupin's hands tightened on Harry's shoulders. Sirius froze. Harry's breath came in short, sharp bursts. He looked at the ash coating his skin. Then he looked at Lupin. His voice finally worked thin and shaking. "My wand." Lupin didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on Harry's hand, on the faint blue glow beneath Harry's skin, on the way the air around Harry seemed to react to him. Then Lupin whispered, like the words hurt to say, "Harry, I don't think you can use one anymore." Harry's stomach dropped. That was impossible. A wizard without a wand was like a bird without wings. He opened his mouth to protest, to demand an explanation, to panic. But before he could, lightning flashed outside the tower again. This time, Harry felt it in his teeth, in his bones, in the air behind his eyes. The storm didn't feel like weather anymore. It felt like something alive, and it felt like it had just recognized him. Harry's eyes widened, because in that instant, he realized the worst part wasn't that his wand had turned to ash. The worst part was that a small, secret part of him had liked it. Like the feeling of power so raw, it didn't need to focus. Like the way the storm had obeyed him without him even asking. Harry's veins pulsed blue again. The tower's torches flickered. Sirius backed up a step, ears flattening, not in fear of Harry, but in fear of what was waking up inside him. Lupin swallowed hard, voice hoarse. "We need to get you to the hospital wing." Harry nodded numbly. He tried to stand again, and this time, when his feet touched stone, the floor felt different. Not just cold, present. Like he could feel the castle's bones under his toes. Like the tower wasn't just stone. Like it was something older, and it had just opened one eye. Harry's gaze drifted to the open window frames where glass had once been. Wind howled through the gaps, wild and hungry. And somewhere far below, deep in the castle, a faint bell rang an alarm responding to shattered wards and broken windows. They had seconds before someone came running. Lupin scooped up the ash of Harry's wand with trembling fingers, as if refusing to accept it was gone. Sirius nudged Harry again, urging him toward the door. Harry moved slow, unsteady, wrapped in Lupin's cloak like a child wearing a storm. As they stepped out into the staircase, Harry glanced back into the tower chamber. The chalk circle on the floor was scorched black. The basin's silvery water had evaporated. And in the center of the burn mark, a thin line of blue light still crawled across the stone like a living vein. Harry swallowed. His scar pulsed once. Not pain, not warning, a greeting. And Harry understood, with sudden, icy clarity, that whatever he had become tonight, it wasn't finished with him. Harry woke up to the sound of someone arguing with reality. Not arguing like Ron argued with Hermione, loud and dramatic, and somehow always hungry. No, this was a sharper kind of argument. A furious, professional kind. The kind that said, I am trained for emergencies, and this emergency is refusing to behave. Hold still, Madame Pomfrey snapped. Harry blinked. The ceiling above him wasn't the hospital wing's ceiling. It was moving, not drifting like clouds. Rotating, slowly, like someone had grabbed the whole room and decided to turn it for fun. Harry swallowed. The taste in his mouth was wrong. Not mandrake anymore, thank Merlin, but still metallic, like he'd licked a coin and forgotten to stop. His whole body ached in a way that suggested he had been taken apart and reassembled by someone who hadn't read the instructions. He tried to sit up. The air crackled. Pomfrey's wand, someone else's wand. Harry realized with a strange pang lifted slightly out of her hand as if tugged by invisible strings. Pomfrey swore. Absolutely not. She hissed at the wand, as though it were misbehaving on purpose. Harry's eyes darted sideways. Professor Lupin stood near the foot of the bed, shoulders tense, face pale, looking like he'd aged 5 years in one night. His coat was still damp, hair flattened by rain that shouldn't have reached him inside. Harry opened his mouth to ask what happened, but his tongue felt too big, and his throat scraped like sandpaper. Pomfrey leaned over him, eyes razor-sharp. Don't try to speak yet. You'll tear something. Harry blinked again. Already tore something, he thought, but he didn't say it. A cool cloth pressed to his forehead, and relief washed through him. Pomfrey muttered, there. Stay. Still. Harry stared at her. Pomfrey stared right back, as if daring him to disobey. Harry had faced basilisk eyes, dementors, and angry Quidditch captains. Madame Pomfrey's glare was still the scariest. He obeyed. Scene 1. The hospital wing that wouldn't stay still. What happened? Harry croaked finally, unable to stop himself. Pomfrey's expression tightened. What happened is that you came into my hospital wing wrapped in a cloak, shivering, glowing, and carrying what looked like the remains of a wand that had been cremated. Harry's eyes flicked to his right hand. Gray ash still dusted his palm, though Pomfrey had scrubbed most of it away. The memory of his wand, crumbling, was a fresh bruise in his mind. Lupin stepped closer. Harry. Pomfrey held up a hand without looking at him. No dramatics, Lupin. I'm trying to assess him. Harry's brow furrowed. Assess what? Pomfrey's jaw clenched. Everything. She flicked her wand and murmured a diagnostic charm. A thin ribbon of pale blue light spilled from the wand tip and drifted toward Harry's chest. Harry watched it with the same dread he felt watching Dementor's approach. The ribbon touched his sternum and vanished. Not faded, Not broke. Vanished, like someone had thrown it into a furnace. Pomfrey blinked. Then her eyes narrowed, insulted. She tried again. This time, the light was green. It spiraled toward his ribs, sank into his skin, and disappeared. Pomfrey exhaled sharply through her nose. Lupin's voice was careful. Poppy. Pomfrey snapped, don't poppy me. Harry stared between them. Why isn't it working? Pomfrey's lips pressed tight. Because your magic is doing something I have never seen in 30 years of healing reckless children. Harry swallowed. That's bad. Pomfrey's stare was deadpan. It's informative. She leaned closer and peered at his eyes. Harry felt suddenly exposed, like she wasn't looking at him, but through him. He tried to look away. The moment he shifted his gaze, the torch flames along the hospital wing walls flickered, stretching sideways like the wind had grabbed them. Pomfrey's head snapped up. Lupin's eyes widened. Harry froze. The flames corrected themselves, trembling. Harry whispered, I didn't. I know you didn't, Pomfrey said briskly, but her voice had lost a fraction of its confidence. That's the problem. She moved to the cabinet at the side of the room and pulled out a vial of shimmering blue potion. Drink, she ordered. Harry reached for it. His fingers brushed the glass, and the vial sparked. A tiny arc of electricity snapped from the vial into Harry's fingertip, sharp enough to sting. Harry jerked back with a hiss. Pomfrey's eyes flashed. Oh, for. She grabbed the vial herself and thrust it toward him again, more carefully this time, as if approaching a wild animal with food. Harry lifted it slowly. His skin tingled. The potion inside swirled violently, as if it could sense him. Harry swallowed one mouthful. It tasted like frost and peppermint, and then it was gone, warmth spreading through his chest like a fireplace being lit. For half a second, he felt better. Then the warmth didn't settle. It started moving, like the potion was trying to find a place to sit inside him and realizing there wasn't one. Harry's breath hitched. Pomfrey's diagnostic wand was still in her hand, and Harry watched it lift an inch again, trembling like a compass needle near a magnet. Pomfrey's face hardened. She looked at Lupin. Tell me exactly what you did. Lupin's shoulders tensed. We attempted an animagus transformation. Pomfrey stared. Lupin added quickly, under controlled conditions. Pomfrey's voice rose. Controlled conditions? Lupin flinched. Pomfrey pointed at Harry with her wand, like it was an accusation. Your idea of controlled conditions resulted in the boy who lived, glowing like a cursed lantern, and eating my spells. Harry blinked. Eating your spells? Pomfrey's eyes flashed. Yes, eating, as if they're snacks. Harry looked down at his hands. Faint blue light pulsed beneath his skin, again barely visible, like moonlight trapped under flesh. He whispered, I don't feel like I'm eating anything. Pomfrey's voice sharpened. Do you feel like you're leaking? Harry hesitated. Because, maybe. He didn't know how to explain it, but his body didn't feel sealed anymore. He felt too aware of the air around him, too aware of the storm beyond the windows, too aware of the fact that his heartbeat made the curtains tremble slightly. He swallowed. Pomfrey took his hesitation as an answer. She turned on her heel and strode toward her office, snapping, I am fetching the headmaster. Lupin's eyes widened. Poppy. Pomfrey spoon. Remus Lupin, you and I will discuss your irresponsible tutoring choices later. For now, your student is doing something unnatural, and I refuse to let him implode in my hospital wing without supervision. She vanished into her office. Harry stared after her, heart pounding. Lupin sat down on the edge of the chair beside the bed, rubbing a hand over his face. Harry's voice was small. Am I going to explode? Lupin looked up sharply. He forced calm into his expression, but Harry saw the fear under it. No, Lupin said too quickly. Then he paused and corrected himself honestly, which somehow made it worse. I don't think so, Lupin said. But, Harry, What happened on that tower wasn't what we expected. Harry's throat tightened. My wand. I know, Lupin said softly. I'm so sorry. Harry clenched his fingers into the blanket. A spark snapped across his knuckles, harmless but visible. Lupin's eyes tracked it with the focus of a man watching a fuse burn. Harry whispered, I didn't even become an animal. Lupin swallowed. No. Harry stared at the ceiling, which had finally stopped rotating. But the world still felt tilted. The hospital wing smelled like clean linen and potion fumes, but beneath it he could smell something sharper. Storm air. Ozone. Like the sky had followed him inside. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he heard a distant bark outside the window, quiet, hidden. Serious. A thin thread of comfort wrapped around Harry's ribcage, tighter than any blanket. Then the door at the far end of the wing opened, and the air changed. Not because of magic, because of presence. Scene 2. Spells that starved. Dumbledore entered like he owned time. His robe was midnight blue, embroidered with tiny stars that shimmered when he moved. His half-moon glasses caught the torchlight, making his eyes look like bright coins, curious, sharp, and far too awake for the hour. Madame Pomfrey followed him, jaw set. Dumbledore's gaze fell on Harry. And for a second, Harry felt like a book being opened. Not judged. Not condemned. Read. Harry, Dumbledore said gently. How are you feeling? Harry opened his mouth, and his scar pulsed. Not pain. Just a reminder that Voldemort was inside his life like a crack in the foundation. I feel weird, Harry said finally. Pomfrey let out a humorless snort, an excellent medical description. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled faintly. It is at least accurate. He moved to the side of the bed, hands clasped behind his back, and studied Harry's face carefully. What exactly occurred? Dumbledore asked. Lupin answered, voice tight but steady. We performed the animagus process. When the lightning struck, Harry didn't transform. He deconstructed. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. Pomfrey snapped. His wand turned to ash the moment he touched it. Dumbledore's gaze slid to Harry's hands. May I? He asked. Harry hesitated. Not because he didn't trust Dumbledore, because he wasn't sure touching anyone was safe. But Dumbledore held out his hand like offering, not taking. Harry slowly extended his fingers. Dumbledore's skin was warm and dry. The moment their hands touched, a faint crackle of static snapped between them. Harry flinched. Dumbledore didn't. He simply watched the little spark with mild interest, like observing a curious insect. HM, Dumbledore murmured. Pomfrey said, don't HM like this is a puzzle. Dumbledore smiled gently. I am afraid it is. He released Harry's hand and lifted his own wand. Pomfrey stiffened. Be careful. I will be, Dumbledore promised. He pointed his wand at Harry and spoke a diagnostic charm in a language Harry didn't recognize. The air shimmered. A ring of gold light formed above Harry's chest. It spun once, and then the gold light didn't vanish. It bent, like it had hit something invisible and slid aside. The ring warped into an oval, then a spiral, then collapsed into a shower of sparks that fizzled before reaching the bed. Harry stared. Pomfrey's mouth fell open slightly, then snapped shut again like she was offended by her own surprise. Dumbledore lowered his wand slowly. His expression had changed. Not fear, not anger. Something more unsettling. Recognition. Oh, Dumbledore whispered. Lupin leaned forward. What is it? Dumbledore didn't answer immediately. Instead, he lifted his wand again, but this time he didn't point it at Harry. He pointed it at the air around Harry. And the air responded. Dust motes rose gently, swirling in a slow orbit around the bed. Curtains billowed as if caught in a breeze that didn't exist. The metal bed frame gave a faint hum, like a tuning fork struck softly. Harry's skin prickled. Dumbledore watched all of it like it confirmed something he'd hoped was only legend. Then he looked at Pomfrey. Do you have a quill? Pomfrey glared. In my office. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled faintly again. May I borrow it? Pomfrey looked like she wanted to argue with him on principle. Then she turned and stalked away, muttering about madmen and their curiosities. Dumbledore turned to Lupin. Remus, did Harry's transformation involve any external influence? Lupin stiffened. No, only the standard process. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened slightly. No potions beyond the base? Only what was required. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Harry swallowed. Professor, what happened to me? Dumbledore looked at him. And for once, his voice didn't sound like a kindly grandfather. It sounded like an ancient man standing on the edge of a cliff. Harry, Dumbledore said softly, your magic is behaving as if it is no longer contained. Harry's stomach dropped. Contained by what? Dumbledore's eyes flicked to Harry's chest. By you. Harry's breath caught. I don't understand, Harry whispered. Dumbledore held up a finger. Patience. We will. He stepped back and began tracing runes in the air with his wand, slow, careful, deliberate. Each rune hung briefly, glowing faintly, then sank into the space around Harry's bed like invisible anchors. The air steadied. The curtain stopped billowing. The dust mote settled. Harry exhaled shakily. Dumbledore said, almost to himself, fascinating. Pomfrey returned, shoving a quill and parchment into his hands like she was handing him a weapon. Dumbledore murmured thanks and wrote quickly. Not words. Symbols. Lines and circles and tiny marks that looked like maps to places humans weren't meant to go. Harry watched, uneasy. Lupin whispered, Albus? Dumbledore didn't look up. Remus, I want you to listen very carefully. This is not a medical condition, and it is not a curse in the conventional sense. Pomfrey bristled. Then what is it? Dumbledore finally looked up. His gaze landed on Harry again. Harry, Dumbledore said, your magical core has fractured the boundaries of your soul. Silence. Even the torches seemed to hold their breath. Harry's voice came out faint. Is that bad? Pomfrey made a sound like she was choking on rage. Dumbledore's expression was grave. It is unprecedented. Harry stared at his hands again. They looked normal, but they didn't feel normal. It felt like he could reach out and grab the wind. It felt like he could crack the air open if he got angry enough. It felt like he was a storm wearing skin. Pomfrey snapped, explain in English. Dumbledore's gaze softened slightly. A wand focuses magic. A wizard's body helps contain it. Most magical cores grow within the structure of a human soul, like a flame within a lantern. Harry swallowed. Dumbledore continued, but your lantern has cracked, and the flame is no longer content to stay small. Harry's throat tightened painfully. Why? Dumbledore hesitated. Lupin leaned closer, eyes anxious. Dumbledore's voice turned quiet. Because you are not built like other wizards. Harry's scar pulsed faintly again. Dumbledore's eyes flicked to it. Then he said, carefully, you have always carried an excess of magic, not merely because you are powerful, but because you are linked to something older and more chaotic than a child should ever hold. Harry's heartbeat thundered. Voldemort, Harry whispered. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Yes. Pomfrey scoffed. So the Dark Lord has finally done something useful? Broken the boy? Dumbledore's gaze snapped to her sharp, warning. Pomfrey fell silent, lips tight. Dumbledore looked back at Harry, gentler. Harry, do you remember what you said the night you faced the Dement on the train? You said you could hear your mother screaming. Harry's throat closed. He nodded, eyes burning. Dumbledore's voice was softer. Dementors do not merely drain joy. They expose cracks. They widen wounds. They pull at the edges of a soul. Harry's fingers curled into the blanket. A faint crackle snapped across the fabric. Dumbledore continued, "Your animagus attempt was meant to reshape your magic within your soul, to reveal an animal form, a stable truth." Harry swallowed hard. But, but instead, Dumbledore said quietly, "The storm did not shape you." He paused, then spoke the terrifying sentence slowly, as if giving Harry time to understand each word. "You shaped the storm." Harry's blood turned cold. Lupin whispered, "Albus, what is he?" Dumbledore's eyes went distant, as if looking past the hospital wing walls into something buried deep in history. Then he said, "I believe Harry is what ancient texts called a primordial catalyst." Pomfrey stared. "That sounds like nonsense." Dumbledore smiled faintly. "It is also very old nonsense." Harry's voice shook. "What does it mean?" Dumbledore turned to him fully. The kindness was still there, but now it was layered with something heavy. Responsibility. Fear. Awe. "It means," Dumbledore said, "that you're not merely a wizard who casts spells." Harry felt his stomach drop. Dumbledore's eyes held his. "You're becoming something closer to magic itself." Scene 3. The prophecy isn't love tonight. Harry wanted to laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. Magic itself? He was 13. He still got stuck on homework questions. He still forgot what day it was sometimes. He still panicked when Snape stared at him too long. He wasn't magic itself. He was just Harry. But when he tried to inhale, he tasted lightning again, and the torches flickered like they were listening. Dumbledore spoke again, voice careful. "There's a prophecy concerning you and Lord Voldemort." Harry's jaw tightened. "I know." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. "You know?" Harry swallowed. "Not all of it, but I know there's something." Dumbledore's gaze sharpened with regret. Pomfrey muttered, "Of course he knows. This school leaks secrets like a broken cauldron." Dumbledore ignored her and continued, "There's a line, the one with the power the Dark Lord knows not." Harry's scar tingled faintly. Dumbledore's voice dropped. "For years, I believed that power was love." Harry's chest tightened. Love. His mother's sacrifice. The protection. The warmth that hurt Dementors. Dumbledore's expression turned grim. "But I'm beginning to suspect," Dumbledore said, "that the prophecy was incomplete in its interpretation." Harry whispered, "Then what is it?" Dumbledore's eyes locked on Harry's glowing veins. "Creation," Dumbledore said softly. "Ro, kiiti krisishern." The kind of magic that existed before wands, before spells, before wizarding society learned to pretend magic was tame. Pomfrey shook her head sharply. "You're making this worse." "No," Dumbledore said quietly. "I am naming it." Harry's heart hammered. Dumbledore continued. "Some ancient wizards believed there were individuals born as thresholds, catalysts. When their magic awakened, it did not obey the usual limitations. It did not remain within neat boundaries." Harry swallowed. "Like elementals." Dumbledore's eyes flickered with approval. "Yes." Lupin's voice was strained, but Harry's animagus form did not become an animal, Dumbledore finished, because the truth within Harry is not animal. Harry's skin prickled. He remembered the moment of becoming wind, the moment of becoming storm. It had felt true. Pomfrey cut in sharply. "If he's some ancient magical anomaly, can you fix him?" Dumbledore's silence was answer enough. Pomfrey's face tightened with anger, not at Dumbledore, not at Harry. At helplessness. "We can't keep him like this," Pomfrey snapped. "His magic is interfering with basic healing. It's disrupting the room." As if to prove her point, the water in a nearby glass trembled and lifted slightly off the table, hovering a centimeter above it. Harry stared at it. He hadn't done anything. Had he? He looked away, frightened. The glass dropped back down with a clink. Dumbledore's gaze didn't leave Harry. "Harry!" Do you feel as though you might dissolve if you stop concentrating? Harry's mouth went dry. Because yes. He whispered yes. Lupin's face went pale again. Dumbledore nodded slowly, like that confirmed the last piece of the puzzle. Then he said, "We must act quickly." Pomfrey crossed her arms. Finally, something sensible. Dumbledore turned to Lupin. "Remus, I need you to remain with Harry." Lupin nodded immediately. And Dumbledore said, lowering his voice, "I need you to ensure that Sirius does not do anything reckless." Lupin's eyes flicked toward the window. A shadow passed outside, large, canine, silent. Harry's chest tightened with relief. Sirius was still there. Dumbledore continued, "Poppy, I will ward this wing." Pomfrey said sharply, "And what about the Ministry?" Dumbledore's gaze went very still. "We will not inform the Ministry until we understand what we're dealing with." Pomfrey looked like she wanted to argue. Then she looked at Harry, pale, trembling too bright under his skin. And her expression softened just enough to show she remembered he was a child. "Fine," she said grudgingly. "But if he sneezes and the castle turns upside down, it's on you." Harry swallowed. "I'm not going to sneeze." Pomfrey gave him a look. Children always say that right before they do. Harry frowned. "That's not." And then his nose tickled. Harry froze. His eyes widened. "Oh no. No, no, no." He tried to breathe slowly. The tickle grew stronger. Lupin leaned forward. "Harry." Harry's nose twitched. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. Pomfrey's eyes narrowed as if she could intimidate the sneeze into retreat. Harry's body betrayed him. "Ah!" He sneezed. The world flipped. Not metaphorically. Literally. Gravity reversed in the hospital wing like someone turned it off and on again wrong. Pomfrey's jars flew upward, clinking against the ceiling. Curtains flung themselves toward the rafters. Quills and parchment lifted, spinning. Harry himself rose half an inch above the bed before slamming back down as gravity caught itself again. The entire hospital wing shook like it had been slapped. Then everything dropped. Bottles crashed. A tray clattered. A pillow hit the floor with a sad whump. Silence followed. Harry stared at his own hands in horror. Pomfrey slowly turned her head and looked at him like she was deciding whether to strangle him. Harry whispered, "I told you I wasn't going to sneeze." Pomfrey's voice was deadly. "I hate being right." Lupin had both hands gripping the bed frame, breathing hard. Dumbledore looked almost impressed. Almost. He waved his wand once. The broken jars repaired themselves. The curtains settled. The quills returned to the table like obedient birds. Then Dumbledore spoke, voice firmer. "Harry, we must move you." Harry's stomach dropped. "Move me where?" Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. "Somewhere warded for this." Pomfrey snapped, "Quarantine." Harry flinched. "Like I'm a disease." Pomfrey's eyes softened for half a second. "Like you're a boy whose magic can turn my hospital wing into a tumble dryer." Harry grimaced. Dumbledore added gently, "This is not punishment. It is protection." Harry's throat tightened. "From who?" Dumbledore's expression turned grim. "From the world." Scene 4. The room that ate spells. They moved Harry at dawn. Not through the main corridors. Not through the grand staircase where portraits would gossip and Peeves would throw chalk and students would stare. They used a side passage behind the hospital wing, a narrow, old hallway that smelled of stone dust and ancient wax. Harry walked slowly, wrapped in blankets, barefoot because Pomfrey refused to let him put on shoes until she was sure the laces wouldn't turn into snakes or something equally unreasonable. Lupin stayed close at his side, hand hovering near Harry's elbow like he was ready to catch him if he drifted into mist again. Dumbledore walked ahead, wand out, placing wards as they went. Pomfrey marched behind them, muttering about reckless teachers and magical nonsense. Outside the window, a black dog padded along the grounds, keeping pace with them like a shadow that refused to leave. Harry saw him and felt his chest loosen slightly. I'm not alone. They stopped at an old door Harry had never noticed before. It was plain wood, but it had iron hinges carved with runes. Dumbledore rested his palm against it. The runes glowed faintly. The door opened silently. Inside was a room that didn't feel like Hogwarts. It felt older. The walls were thick stone, etched with symbols that made Harry's eyes ache. A circle was carved into the floor, not chalk, not temporary stone cut into stone. A single bed sat in the center, surrounded by 4 pillars carved like twisted roots. The air tasted grounded. Heavy. Harry stepped inside, and for the first time since the tower, he felt like the world wasn't pulling him apart. He exhaled shakily. What is this? He whispered. Dumbledore's voice was quiet. An old containment room, created long ago for anomalies. Pomfrey snorted. Lovely. Harry looked down. His veins still glowed faint blue, but the light seemed dimmer here, calmer. Like the room was drinking the excess charge. Harry swallowed. So I'm locked in here. Dumbledore's gaze softened. Not locked. Sheltered. There's a difference. Pomfrey crossed her arms. We should still lock it. Harry shot her a look. Pomfrey didn't blink. What? I like my hospital wing upright. Lupin's mouth twitched faintly, despite everything. Dumbledore stepped toward Harry and lowered his voice. Harry, I will be consulting certain texts. Harry's stomach tightened. Restricted ones. Dumbledore smiled faintly. Restricted even from headmasters. That should not have been comforting. Somehow it was worse. Harry whispered, Am I dangerous? Dumbledore didn't lie. You are, Dumbledore said softly, but you're also Harry Potter. Harry stared at him, throat burning. Dumbledore continued, We will help you. We will teach you control. But until then, your safety and the safety of those around you must come first. Harry's jaw clenched. The Ministry will find out. Pomfrey muttered, Oh, they always do. Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. Not before I am ready. Harry's scar pulsed faintly again. Dumbledore noticed. His gaze turned inward, calculating. Then he said, almost to himself, If Voldemort learns what you are becoming. Lupin's voice was low. He'll come. Dumbledore's gaze met Lupin's. Yes, Dumbledore said quietly, and he will either try to kill Harry or claim him. Harry's blood ran cold. Claim him? Like a weapon. Like a tool. Like something that belonged to darkness. Harry's fingers clenched and the air crackled faintly. Dumbledore raised his hand gently. Breathe, Harry. Harry forced himself to inhale. The heavy air of the room made it easier. Dumbledore nodded. Good. Pomfrey pointed at Harry. No more sneezing. Harry glared. I can't control sneezing. Pomfrey's eyes narrowed. Learn. Harry almost laughed. Almost. Dumbledore turned toward the door. I will return soon. Harry's heart thudded. How soon? Dumbledore's gaze was steady. Soon enough. He paused, hand on the doorframe, and added softly, Harry, you are not a monster. Harry swallowed hard. Dumbledore continued, but the world may call you one. Then he left. The door closed with a heavy, final sound. Harry stood in the center of the containment room, wrapped in blankets, glowing faintly under his skin, feeling the weight of the castle around him like an ancient creature watching. Lupin stayed with him. Pomfrey stayed long enough to glare at the walls and mutter threats at the universe. Then she left too, promising to bring food and potions assuming your magic doesn't turn soup into a thunderstorm. Harry sat on the bed. The room was quiet, but not empty. The air hummed softly, like the earth itself was listening. Harry stared at his hands again. He tried to imagine going back to classes like this. Transfiguration, potions, herbology. How was he supposed to stir a cauldron when sneezing could flip gravity? How was he supposed to hold a quill when his magic pulled metal like a magnet? How was he supposed to be a normal boy when the storm outside felt like it was calling his name? Outside, far away, thunder rumbled faintly, and Harry felt it answer inside his bones. Lupin's voice was gentle. Harry will figure this out. Harry swallowed hard. What if we can't? Lupin didn't flinch. We will, Lupin said, because you don't get to give up, not after everything. Harry stared at the carved circle on the floor, at the runes in the walls, at the way the room felt like a cage and a cradle both. His scar pulsed again, and for a split second, Harry felt something through it. A cold curiosity, a distant attention turning toward him, as if somewhere in the world, a dark lord had just felt the air change and smiled. Harry's veins glowed faintly brighter. Lupin stiffened. Harry whispered, barely audible, he knows. The torches outside the room flickered, and the storm beyond Hogwarts rolled closer, hungry and awake. Harry learned something important on the second day of quarantine. Hogwarts did not like uncertainty. It tolerated chaos barely. It survived student explosions, Peeves' tantrums, and the occasional troll in the dungeon with the exhausted patience of an old castle that had seen worse. But uncertainty? Uncertainty made the walls creak at night like they were whispering. Uncertainty made the torches flicker like they were nervous. Uncertainty made the air feel thin, and Harry was uncertainty wearing a blanket. He sat cross-legged on the bed inside the old containment room, while Professor Lupin tried to pretend this was normal. Lupin had brought a stack of books, a kettle, and a chair that looked too small for his dress. Harry stared at the rune-carved floor circle. The circle stared back in the way carved stone sometimes did, silent, firm, unarguable. Lupin spoke gently, like talking to a frightened animal. How do you feel? Harry swallowed. Like if I stop thinking, I'll float away. He didn't say it dramatically. He said it like a fact. Because it was. There were moments, tiny moments, when his mind drifted, when his eyes unfocused, when exhaustion pulled him towards sleep. And his fingertips would go numb. Not numb like cold. Numb like not being part of him anymore. Like his body was an optional suggestion. He tightened his hands into fists. A faint blue glow pulsed under his skin. Lupin watched it and tried not to look afraid. Okay, Lupin said slowly. We'll keep you anchored. Harry's jaw clenched. With what? I don't have a wand. I can't do spells. My magic eats them. Lupin opened his mouth, then hesitated. Harry's scar pricked faintly again. Not pain, just pressure, like a finger tapping a glass. Lupin's eyes flicked to the scar, then away, guilt in his expression like a shadow. Harry exhaled sharply. He knows. Voldemort. I can feel him sometimes. Like he's paying attention. Lupin's voice was careful. Does it feel like him inside you? Harry closed his eyes. He remembered the tower becoming lightning, becoming wind. He remembered the moment the scar had pulsed like a second heartbeat. It feels like a line, Harry whispered. Like a wire. Like he's on the other end. Lupin swallowed hard. Dumbledore will handle that. Harry laughed once short, bitter. Dumbledore's handling everything. I'm still stuck in here. Lupin didn't deny it. Because he couldn't. Instead, Lupin leaned forward and said quietly, Harry, someone is coming today? Harry's stomach tightened. Who? Lupin hesitated, then answered honestly. An expert, not a teacher, not a ministry consultant. Harry's eyes narrowed. Then who? Lupin's mouth twisted. Someone who doesn't like wizards. Harry blinked. That narrows it down to half the magical world. Lupin let out a breath that might have been a laugh if it wasn't so exhausted. Fair. Harry shifted on the bed. The air crackled faintly as his blanket moved. Is it safe? Harry asked. Lupin's expression went serious. Safer than doing nothing. Harry stared at the stone circle on the floor again, because doing nothing felt like drowning slowly in air. Scene 1. the visitor who walked like stone. The door opened at midday, not with a creak, with a weight. The runes on the hinges glowed faintly, as if recognizing something ancient, and the air in the room suddenly felt denser, like the world had put its foot down. Dumbledore entered first, calm as always. Behind him came Professor McGonagall, looking like she'd slept exactly 0 minutes and had converted all of that frustration into pure control. And behind them, Harry's breath caught. A goblin walked into the room. Not Griphook. Harry had seen Griphook at Gringotts once, sharp-eyed and cold. This goblin was older, taller for his kind. His skin was the color of weathered bronze, and his hair was pulled back tight like he didn't allow even a single strand to disobey him. He wore a dark leather coat sewn with thin metallic threads that made patterns when he moved runes, Harry realized, but not the kind wizards carved on doors for decoration. These runes looked like contracts. The goblin's eyes were a deep, ember-like gold. They flicked to Harry once, and Harry felt very suddenly like the goblin was measuring him the way a smith measures a blade. Then the goblin looked at the floor circle and made a low sound in his throat. Not impressed. Disappointed. "This is your containment?" The goblin asked in English, so crisp it sounded like it had been sharpened. McGonagall stiffened like someone had insulted her mother. Dumbledore smiled gently. "It is what Hogwarts has." The goblin snorted. "Hogwarts is ancient. That circle is childish." Harry's eyebrows rose. McGonagall's voice was dangerous. "Mind your tone in my castle." The goblin didn't even glance at her. "Your castle? Goo." McGonagall took a step forward. Dumbledore lifted one hand slightly, a calm gesture that somehow stopped the entire room from becoming a duel. "Harry," Dumbledore said, voice warm, "this is Master Karzook Stonevane." The goblin's lips twitched, almost amused. "Master? HM." Dumbledore continued smoothly, "A geomancy specialist, a spell forger, and a very reluctant consultant." Karzook's gaze slid to Dumbledore. "I agreed because you used the old favors." Dumbledore inclined his head. "And because the boy will die if we do not." Karzook's eyes returned to Harry. Harry sat very still. Karzook walked closer. Every step he took felt like the air grew heavier. Not magically oppressive. Grounded. Harry realized his own glow had dimmed slightly since the goblin entered, as if the storm inside him had met something it respected. Karzook stopped at the edge of the carved circle. He didn't step in. He crouched and pressed 2 fingers to the stone. Then he looked up at Harry and said bluntly, "You are leaking." Harry swallowed. "Thanks." Karzook's eyes narrowed. Sarcasm wastes breath. McGonagall's lips pressed tight. "He is a child." Karzook snapped. "He is a storm wearing a child's skin." Silence. Even Harry didn't have a comeback for that. Karzook rose and finally stepped over the circle. The runes in the stone flared faintly defensive, uncertain. Karzook ignored them like stepping over a puddle. He stopped right in front of Harry. Harry felt the urge to flinch. Not because he was afraid the goblin would hurt him, because he felt like the goblin could see him. Not Harry the boy, Harry the problem. Karzook lifted a hand and held it close to Harry's chest without touching. Harry felt pull, a tug in his ribs, a pressure in his veins. Karzook's brows furrowed, then lifted slightly. "Interesting," he murmured. Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. "What do you sense?" Karzook's voice was quiet, but the words hit like stones. "His core is not contained in the usual vessel. It's spread, diffused, like lightning in cloud." Harry's throat tightened. "Can you fix it?" Karzook's eyes flicked to him. "Feeks? No." Harry's stomach dropped. Karzook continued. "Anchor? Possibly." Harry stared. "What's the difference?" Karzook leaned closer, voice low and sharp. "Fix means returning you to what you were." Anchor means ensuring you do not fly apart. Harry swallowed hard. McGonagall's voice softened slightly. And how do you propose we anchor him? Karzook's gaze slid to the floor, then the walls, then strangely the direction of the castle beneath them. You have earth, Karzook said. Stone, bedrock, old bones. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Yes. Karzook looked back at Harry. Then you will learn wait. Harry blinked. Wait? Karzook's eyes narrowed like Harry had asked something foolish. Storm is hunger. Storm wants to spread. Storm wants to become sky. You cannot stop that with will alone. You need the opposite. Harry's voice was small. Earth. Karzook's mouth twitched again. Finally, a thought. McGonagall looked offended on Harry's behalf. Harry was too busy trying not to panic, because the idea of learning Earth sounded impossible. He wasn't Neville. He didn't have calm plant magic. He had lightning under his skin and a sneeze that could flip gravity. Karzook stepped back and pointed at the bed. Stand, he ordered. Harry hesitated. Dumbledore said softly, Harry. Harry forced himself to stand. The moment his feet touched the rune-carved stone circle, he felt the floor more intensely than before, like it was aware of him. Karzook circled Harry slowly, like inspecting a weapon. You're trying to hold yourself together with thought, Karzook said. Harry's jaw clenched. It's all I've got. Karzook snorted. Thought is wind. You're fighting wind with wind. Harry swallowed. So what do I do? Karzook stopped and jabbed a finger toward the floor. Feel. Harry blinked. A what? Karzook's eyes narrowed. Feel. Your feet. The stone. The pressure. The density. You are not a mind floating in air. You are a thing with weight. Harry tried. He looked down at his bare feet. He felt the stone. Cold. Solid. Unmoving. He tried to imagine his body sinking into it, heavy and stable. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the air around his ankles tightened. Not crackling, settling. Harry felt heavier. His shoulders dropped slightly without a meaning to. His breathing slowed. The faint blue glow under his skin dimmed further. Harry's eyes widened. Karzook's mouth curved in something that might have been satisfaction. Good. Then Karzook's expression sharpened. Now do it again. Harry frowned. Again, Karzook snapped. Storm is instinct. Earth must become instinct too. Harry swallowed and focused harder. He pictured roots. He pictured stone. He pictured himself as an anchor dropped into a dark sea. His magic resisted at first, wild, restless. Then it yielded. The room felt heavier again, and Harry felt terrifyingly more present. Karzook nodded once. You can learn. McGonagall's shoulders loosened slightly, relief flickering in her eyes. Lupin, standing near the wall, exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. Dumbledore's gaze remained intent. How long will it take? Karzook's eyes glinted. How long does it take to teach lightning to sit still? Silence. Karzook continued. We will start with the simplest contract. Harry blinked. Contract? Karzook gestured toward his own coat. Runes are contracts. The earth accepts you if you respect it. The storm obeys you if you command it. But you must choose what you are. Harry's throat tightened. I am Harry. Karzook's gaze cut like a blade. Not anymore. Harry flinched. McGonagall's voice snapped. That's enough. Karzook didn't look at her. If you let him cling to childish comfort, he will dissolve the first time fear makes him forget his name. Harry's hands trembled. A spark snapped across his knuckles. Karzook watched it with interest, not fear. Then he said, very simply, you need an anchor. Harry swallowed. Like a wand? Karzook's eyes flashed with disdain. Wand or crutches? You need weight. Scene 2. The stone that answered. Karzook produced something from inside his coat. A thick band of dark metal, wide enough to cover Harry's wrist like a cuff. It was etched with runes deep, precise, sharp-edged. It looked ancient. It looked expensive. It looked like it could ruin someone's day if thrown hard enough. Harry stared at it. What is that? Karzook held it out. A grounding shackle. McGonagall bristled. Shackle? Karzook's eyes flicked to her for the first time. Do not dramatize language. It is a tool. Harry didn't move. Karzook's gaze returned to Harry. It will not trap you. It will tell your magic where down is. Harry swallowed. And you just happen to have one? Karzook's mouth twitched. I make them. For minors. For forgers. For fools who stand too close to unstable magic. Harry hesitated, then extended his arm. Karzook snapped the cuff around Harry's wrist. The metal touched his skin. And Harry gasped. Not pain. Not cold. A pull. Like the cuff grabbed the lightning under his skin and yanked it downward. Harry's knees wobbled. Lupin stepped forward instinctively, but Harry steadied himself. The glow under his skin dimmed sharply. The crackle in the air stopped. Harry blinked rapidly, shocked. For the first time since the tower, his body felt sealed. Not perfectly, but enough that his mind didn't feel like the only thing holding him together. Harry whispered, Karzook watched him. You feel it. Harry swallowed hard. It's heavy. Karzook nodded. Good. Dumbledore's gaze was fascinated. The cuff is drawing excess magical charge into the bedrock. Karzook's eyes narrowed. Not charge. Respect. Harry blinked. Respect? Karzook tapped the runes. The cuff is a promise. It tells the earth, this storm is not here to steal. This storm is here to stand. Harry stared at the cuff like it might bite him. McGonagall's voice was cautious. Is it safe? Karzook's answer was immediate. Safer than leaving him unmoored. Harry's fingers flexed. The cuff was warm now, almost humming. He could feel something beneath his feet, something deeper than stone. A slow, endless pressure. The earth. And it felt like it had noticed him. Harry whispered, without meaning to, Hogwarts is sitting on it. Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. Yes. Harry's gaze snapped up. The castle, its wards. Karzook interrupted. The castle is built like a nail hammered into the land. It sits on old lines, old bones. That is why it is strong. Harry swallowed. And I can. Karzook's eyes gleamed. You can anchor to it. Harry's stomach flipped. That sounded too big. Too dangerous. Too much like becoming something else entirely. Karzook stepped back. Training begins now. McGonagall's voice rose. Now. He's still. Karzook's gaze cut to her. He is always still becoming. That is the point. If you wait until he is stable, he will never be stable. McGonagall's lips pressed tight. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Proceed. Harry looked at Lupin helplessly. Lupin's eyes were worried, but steady. We'll be here. Harry exhaled shakily. Karzook pointed at the circle carved into the floor. Stand in the center. Harry stepped into the center. Karzook crouched and pressed his fingers to the stone again. The runes in the floor responded faintly. Then Karzook began to speak in a language Harry didn't know. Not Latin spells. Not runes as decoration. It sounded like rock grinding against rock. And as he spoke, the circle in the floor began to glow. A deep, earthy amber. The air thickened. Harry's skin prickled not with static, but with pressure. Karzook stood and said sharply, "Close your eyes." Harry obeyed. "Breathe," Karzook commanded. Not like a human, like a mountain. Harry frowned. "How?" Karzook snapped, "Do not ask how. Feel it. Your lungs are bellows. Fill them slowly. Hold. Release. Slow." Harry tried. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. The cuff on his wrist hummed. The floor beneath his feet felt closer, like it was pulling him down. Not crushing. Anchoring. Karzook's voice continued. Storm is fast. Storm panics. Storm spreads. Earth does not panic. Harry swallowed. He breathed again, slower. He imagined weight. He imagined sinking roots into stone. And for a moment, he felt something answer. Not words, not a voice. A sensation like leaning against a wall that would never move. Harry's shoulders loosened. His heartbeat steadied. Karzuk said quietly, "Now call your storm." Harry's eyes snapped open. What? Karzuk's gaze was unwavering. Call it. Bring it to the surface. Harry's mouth went dry. He didn't want to, because when the storm came up, it wanted to spread. It wanted to become everything. But Karzuk's eyes held as like a challenge. Harry clenched his jaw and reached inward. He felt the lightning under his skin stir. He felt wind in his ribs. He felt ozone in his throat. Blue glow brightened faintly. The air crackled. Karzuk's voice cut through it like a hammer. Hold it. Harry tried. The storm pressed outward, and the earth pressed back. The cuff dragged the excess downward. The floor's circle glowed brighter. Harry trembled. He felt like a thundercloud trapped in a bottle. Karzuk stepped closer and said low, "Intense, this is the duality. Storm wants to move. Earth wants to hold. You will be both." Harry's teeth clenched. He forced himself to stay. Not to explode. Not to dissolve. To stand. His legs shook. His skin glowed blue. But he did not break. Karzuk nodded once, satisfied. Again. Harry exhaled shakily. Again. Karzuk's eyes were merciless. Again. Until you can do it while frightened. Harry's throat tightened. I am frightened. Karzuk's mouth twitched. Good. Then we are already training the correct problem. Scene 3. The lesson of weight. Hours passed. Harry lost track of time, because time didn't feel real when every breath was an argument between storm and stone. Karzuk pushed him. Not cruelly. Precisely. Call it. Hold it. Sink. Breathe. Again. Each time, Harry felt the storm rise easier. Each time, he felt the earth answer faster. The cuff grew warmer. His body grew heavier. By the 5th repetition, Harry could feel the difference between panic lightning and controlled lightning, like the difference between a spark and a bolt. By the 8th, he could keep his hands from crackling when he moved. By the 10th, he could stop the curtain from reacting to his heartbeat. He collapsed onto the bed afterward, exhausted beyond words. Karzuk watched him like a smith watching metal cool. Lupin offered Harry a cup of water. Harry took it carefully. The water trembled once, then steadied. Harry drank. It stayed water. That felt like a victory. Dumbledore observed quietly, eyes thoughtful, as if memorizing every detail for some future war. McGonagall paced like a caged cat, unable to relax, but unable to leave. At some point, Karzuk stepped toward the wall and pressed his palm against a rune. The stone hummed. Harry blinked. What are you doing? Karzuk didn't look back. Listening. Harry frowned. To what? Karzuk's voice was flat. To the castle. It is watching you. Harry's stomach tightened. It's alive? Dumbledore spoke softly. Not alive as you and I are alive. But Hogwarts has awareness. Harry stared at the walls. He suddenly felt small. Then he felt something else, something oddly comforting. Because Hogwarts had been his home when he had none. If the castle was watching him, maybe it wasn't to judge. Maybe it was to decide whether he belonged. Karzuk turned back and said bluntly, "The castle does not fear you." Harry blinked. How do you know? Karzuk's eyes gleamed. If it feared you, it would have crushed you already. McGonagall made a sound like she wanted to argue, but didn't. Harry swallowed. So, it accepts me? Karzuk shrugged. It is curious. Harry frowned. That's not comforting. Karzuk's mouth twitched. Curiosity is better than fear. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. Master Karzuk, what exactly is Harry becoming? Karzuk looked at Harry again. This time, his eyes weren't mocking. They were serious. An elemental, Karzuk said, but not like a summoned spirit, not like a creature made from the environment. Harry's throat tightened. Karzuk continued, he is becoming a catalyst, a core that shapes the world around it. Harry whispered, so, I am dangerous. Karzuk's eyes narrowed. You are power. Power is dangerous. A knife is dangerous. Fire is dangerous. A wand is dangerous. Wizards pretend danger is moral. It isn't. It's physics. Harry stared at the cuff. He could feel the earth under him now like a slow heartbeat. And for the first time, he believed he might not dissolve into air. He might not vanish. He might not become a storm that never reforms. But he also felt something else. If he could anchor, he could also pull. He could draw on the earth. He could become more than wind. That thought thrilled him and terrified him. Karzuk stepped closer and said quietly, the next lesson will hurt. Harry's eyes widened. Why? Karzuk's voice was calm. Because you cannot rely on calm conditions. Fear will come. Pain will come. You must hold your form anyway. Harry swallowed hard. Lupin's voice was gentle. We can stop for today. Karzuk's gaze snapped to Lupin. Stopping is how storms win. Harry sat up, exhausted but stubborn. No. Lupin blinked. Harry's voice shook, but it was firm. I'm not letting this control me. Karzuk's eyes gleamed again, approval this time. Good, Karzuk said. Then stand. Harry stood. Karzuk pointed to the center of the circle again. This time, you'll call your storm, and I will disrupt your anchor. Harry's stomach flipped. You'll what? Karzuk's voice was blunt. I will shake your foundation. You will hold anyway. Harry's hands clenched. McGonagall stepped forward sharply. Absolutely not. Karzuk didn't even look at her. Then he will fail when the real disruption comes. And it will. Dementors, dark magic, fear, death. The word death hung in the air like frost. Harry swallowed hard. Dumbledore's voice was quiet, heavy. Proceed. Carefully. McGonagall looked like she wanted to throw something at Dumbledore. But she didn't. Harry stepped into the circle. He breathed like a mountain. He felt the earth. He called the storm. Blue glow brightened. The air crackled. Karzuk placed his palm on the floor and spoke a single grinding syllable. The stone beneath Harry's feet shifted, not physically moving, but the sense of stability wavered like the earth itself had suddenly become slippery. Harry's stomach dropped. Panic surged. The storm inside him leapt at the chance to escape. His skin brightened. The air snapped. And Harry felt himself begin to thin, like mist trying to rise. Harry's eyes widened in terror. Lupin lurched forward. Harry! Harry forced himself to breathe. He clung to the cuff. He clung to the idea of weight. He pictured roots deeper than panic. He pictured bedrock. He pictured Hogwarts under him, ancient and stubborn and refusing to move. Harry growled through clenched teeth. And he pushed downward. Not with muscles. With will. With magic. With the earth. The cuff burned warm. The circle flared amber. And suddenly, Harry felt the stone answer. A heavy, dense pressure rose from beneath him like a hand bracing his spine. Harry's form stopped thinning. The storm recoiled frustrated, contained. Harry's breathing was ragged. But he was still solid. Still human. Still here. Karzuk lifted his hand from the floor. The instability vanished. Harry swayed, exhausted but standing. Karzuk stared at him for a long second. Then he nodded once. You held, Karzuk said. Harry's voice was a whisper. Yeah. Karzuk's eyes gleamed like molten gold. Again tomorrow. Harry groaned. Lupin let out a shaky laugh. Even McGonagall's mouth twitched faintly despite herself. Dumbledore watched Harry with something like pride and something like fear. Because Harry had just done something that didn't feel like a spell. It felt like a law. Harry stepped out of the circle, legs trembling. He looked down at his wrist cuff. He could feel it humming softly. A promise. An anchor. And Harry realized something that made his stomach twist. If the earth could hold him, then the earth could also feed him. If he learned to draw on it, he might become something even bigger, even harder to control. Karzook turned toward Dumbledore. He will not dissolve tonight. Dumbledore exhaled. Thank you. Karzook's mouth twisted. Do not thank me. Pay me. McGonagall muttered, of course. Karzook moved toward the door, then paused and looked back at Harry. Boy, he said. Harry blinked. Yeah? Karzook's eyes narrowed. Do not mistake anchoring for safety. Harry swallowed. What do you mean? Karzook's voice was low. A storm anchored becomes a weapon. Harry's blood went cold, because that sounded like Voldemort's kind of interest. Karzook left. The door closed. Silence fell again. Harry sat on the bed, exhausted, but more solid than he'd felt since the tower. Lupin sat beside him, quiet. McGonagall finally spoke, voice controlled but gentle. Harry, you did well. Harry's throat tightened. I didn't explode. McGonagall's mouth twitched. A remarkably high standard for this school. Harry almost laughed. Almost. Then his scar pulsed again. A faint, cold pressure. A line buzzing. Aguaid faming. Harry's eyes widened slightly. Dumbledore noticed instantly. Harry? Harry swallowed, voice quiet. He's curious. Lupin stiffened. McGonagall's hands clenched. Dumbledore's eyes went very still. Then we must move faster. Harry stared at the rune-carved walls. He felt the earth beneath him like a sleeping giant. He felt the storm within him like an impatient predator. And somewhere far away, through that invisible wire, Harry felt a mind turn toward him with interest. A mind that loved power. A mind that would not ignore a living storm for long. Harry whispered, barely audible, he's coming. Outside, thunder rumbled low and distant like an answer. Harry discovered that fear had layers. There was the normal fear, like when Snape called your name in class and you were holding a cauldron that was definitely turning the wrong color. There was the deep fear, like when a Dementor drifted closer and your lungs forgot how to be warm. And then there was this fear, the kind that sat in your bones and whispered, what if you don't come back? Harry stood in the containment room's stone circle, barefoot again, the grounding cuff warm on his wrist like a living heartbeat. Master Karzook, stone vein, watched him with the patience of a boulder and the softness of a brick. Lupin stood near the wall, tense and ready. McGonagall paced, looking like she'd personally like to duel the concept of unpredictable magic until it apologized. Dumbledore was quiet, eyes sharp, and somewhere outside Harry could feel it even through stone padfoot circled the grounds, a shadow with teeth. Karzook's voice cut cleanly through the room. Tonight. Harry's stomach dipped. Tonight? Karzook nodded once. The test. McGonagall snapped. You cannot mean to do this at night. Karzook's eyes flicked to her. Storms do not ask permission. McGonagall's lips tightened. Harry swallowed. What exactly is the test? Dumbledore spoke gently, but there was steel under it. To remain at Hogwarts, Harry, we must prove you can control your transformation. Harry's throat went dry. Lupin added quietly, it's not just about transforming. Harry looked at him. Lupin's gaze held his. It's about coming back. Harry's fingers curled unconsciously. The cuff hummed warm, grounding. He forced himself to breathe like Karzook had taught him. Slow. Heavy. Like a mountain. Karzook stepped forward and placed 2 fingers on the cuff. This keeps you from scattering. Harry swallowed. And if it fails? Karzook's eyes narrowed like Harry had asked a stupid question. Then you scatter. Harry's face went pale. McGonagall made a sharp sound. How comforting. Karzook's mouth twitched. Comfort is a luxury. Control is survival. Dumbledore lifted his wand and traced a quick rune in the air. The containment rune's carvings glowed faintly in response. "We will not do this here," Dumbledore said. "Hogwarts is full of variables." Harry whispered, "So where?" Dumbledore's eyes went distant, as if listening to the castle itself. "The Forbidden Forest," Dumbledore said. Harry's heart jolted. "The what?" Lupin's voice was careful. "It's secluded. Strong earth. Less risk of collateral damage." Harry stared. "Less risk?" Karzook shrugged. "Trees can burn. Stone cannot." McGonagall hissed, "They're not burning my forest." Karzook looked mildly amused. "Your forest again." McGonagall's glare could have cracked granite. Harry's scar pulsed faintly like something inside him enjoyed the tension. He clenched his jaw and forced his focus downward. "Wait. Earth. Stone." The pulse faded. Dumbledore's eyes flicked to Harry's scar, then back up again. "We leave at midnight," Dumbledore said. And that was that. Scene 1. Midnight on the edge of teeth. Midnight at Hogwarts wasn't silent. It just did it sounds better. The castle creaked softly like it was stretching in its sleep. Torches hissed low. Portraits muttered behind closed curtains. Somewhere far away, Peeves cackled, because Peeves didn't believe in bedtime. Harry walked through a side passage with Lupin on one side and McGonagall on the other, wrapped in a cloak that wasn't his because Pomfrey had refused to let him use the invisibility cloak until you're certain it won't turn you into fog permanently. Harry couldn't argue with that. His wrist cuff hummed under his sleeve like a steady drum. Dumbledore walked ahead, wand out, placing silent wards behind them like breadcrumbs. Karzook followed, hands clasped behind his back, as if this was a mildly inconvenient stroll, not a potentially catastrophic magical experiment. They exited through a side door near the grounds. Cold air hit Harry's face, and something inside him woke up. Not Voldemort, not the scar, the storm. Harry's skin prickled, the hair on his arms lifted. The night smelled like wet grass and distant rain, and Harry could taste the charge in the air like a secret. At the edge of the lawn, Hagrid waited. Harry blinked. Hagrid? Hagrid looked panicked and determined at the same time, which was not a comforting combination. Professor Dumbledore said, "I had to be here," Hagrid whispered loudly, which made Harry wonder if Hagrid understood whispers as a concept. In case, anything big happens. McGonagall's eyes narrowed. "Hagrid, you're not here to wrestle a tornado." Hagrid looked offended. "I weren't gonna wrestle it." Karzook muttered, "Cowardice is wisdom." Hagrid gasped. "Oi." Harry almost smiled. Almost. Then he saw the shadow near the tree line. A large black dog sat perfectly still, watching. Padfoot. Harry's chest loosened a fraction. He didn't feel safe, but he felt guarded. Dumbledore nodded toward the forest. "Let us proceed." They moved. The moment Harry stepped under the first line of trees, the world changed. The air became thicker. The ground felt closer. The forest didn't welcome them. It acknowledged them. Branches creaked overhead like old bones shifting. Leaves rustled though there was barely any wind. The darkness between trunks looked deeper than it should. Harry felt it in his feet. This place was ancient. And the earth here was loud. Not in sound, in presence. Karzook's voice was quiet. "Better." Harry swallowed. "Better?" Karzook didn't look at him. The forest remembers weight. They walked until they reached a small clearing. Moonlight spilled in thin ribbons through the canopy, silvering the ground. Dumbledore lifted his wand and drew a circle on the earth with a single motion. The circle didn't glow. It sank, like the forest accepted it. Then Karzook stepped forward and placed both palms on the ground. He spoke in that grinding, stone language again. The soil shivered. Not like fear, like recognition. A low hum rose up, felt more in Harry's ribs than heard. McGonagall's voice was tight. What did you just do? Karzuk replied, ask permission. McGonagall stared. From the ground? Karzuk's eyes flicked up. For what holds you when you sleep? Harry swallowed hard. Dumbledore turned to Harry. This is the boundary. Harry stared at the circle. It looked normal, but he could feel it like a line drawn in pressure. Inside it, Dumbledore said gently, you may transform. Harry's throat tightened. And outside? Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. Outside, you do not. Harry nodded, jaw clenched. Lupin stepped closer, voice low. Harry, remember storm and earth. Harry whispered, I know. Karzuk's gaze cut in. No, you practice. There is a difference. Harry glared faintly. Karzuk looked pleased by the glare, which was deeply annoying. Hagrid shifted nervously. You sure about this, Harry? Harry glanced at him. Hagrid's hands were clenched tight, like he was trying not to grab Harry and run away. Harry nodded anyway. No, but I'm doing it. Padfoot moved closer to the edge of the clearing, silent, watching. Harry stepped into the circle. The cuff warmed. The ground beneath his feet felt heavier, as if it was bracing for him. Dumbledore's voice was calm. Whenever you are ready. Harry took a breath. Then another. He reached inward toward the storm. He felt it instantly. Wind in his ribs. Lightning under his skin. Ozone in his throat. The desire to expand. To become sky. To become freedom. Harry's heart hammered. He forced himself to remember the other half. Earth. Weight. Stone. He pictured roots sinking from his feet into the ground. He pictured his bones turning dense, unmovable. He let the cuff pull his magic downward. His veins began to glow faint blue. The air crackled softly. Lupin's voice was barely audible. Good, that's it. Harry closed his eyes, and he let go of the idea that he had to stay the shape of a boy. Scene 2, Tempest form. The transformation wasn't pain. Pain was sharp. Pain was simple. This was unmaking. Harry felt his body loosen like a knot being untied. His skin became sensation instead of surface. His lungs became wind instead of breath. His blood became charge instead of liquid. He didn't shrink. He didn't stretch. He unfolded. The air around him spun. Leaves lifted. Dust rose in a slow spiral. Then the storm inside him surged outward. And the circle held. Instead of exploding across the forest, his magic curled inward, contained by weight and boundary and the cuff's steady pull. Harry became a swirling vortex of wind, and lightning tempest form a living spiral with a dense, darker core, like storm clouds wrapped around a stone heart. And then Harry saw, not with eyes, with everything. He felt the world. He felt the magnetic pull of the earth like a deep song under all things. He felt moisture in the air as glittering threads, each droplet vibrating with potential. He felt the heat of living bodies beyond the clearing warm points in the dark. He felt the trees like towers of slow energy, sap moving in patient pulses. He felt the castle far away like a massive anchor hammered into the land, humming with wards and history. He felt enormous, not in size, in awareness. In this form, Harry wasn't trapped behind skin. He was in the world. He could feel the forest's anger at intrusion. He could feel animals freeze in their burrows, hearts thudding. He could feel something big and many-legged shifting deeper in the woods and taste the hunger of it like sour smoke. Spiders. He felt centaurs too moving like disciplined waves, watching from the tree line, bows half raised. Their emotions tasted like old wood and wary pride. They weren't afraid. They were judging. Harry's mind flickered. He remembered he had to control this. A thought like a spark. If I lose focus, I won't come back. The storm inside him surged in response to his fear, wanting to flee, wanting to scatter into sky. The vortex wobbled. Lightning snapped brighter. Wind whined. Harry felt the edges of himself stretch toward freedom. And then the cuff pulled down like an iron promise. Wait. Earth. Harry forced his awareness downward. He found the ground beneath him, not the surface soil, but the deeper stone. He pressed into it, mentally like planting a flag. The vortex steadied. The lightning dimmed slightly. Harry stabilized. He heard voices now not through ears, but through vibration. Outside the circle, Lupin spoke softly. He's holding. McGonagall's voice was tight. Merlin, help us. Karzook's voice was calm. He is learning. Hagrid whispered loudly, Blimey. Dumbledore said nothing. But Harry felt Dumbledore's attention like a calm beam. Harry tested his movement. He drifted slightly within the circle. Wind rotated. Leaves spun in a neat spiral. He could move without legs. He could turn without muscles. He was a storm that could choose. He let a thin tendril of wind extend toward a fallen leaf. The leaf lifted, perfectly balanced, spinning gently. Harry felt absurdly proud. Then his scar pulsed. A cold buzz. Aguaid humming. For a moment, something else brushed his awareness. A distant curiosity. A mind tasting the edge of what Harry was becoming. Voldemort. The storm inside Harry flared instinctively, predator recognizing predator. Lightning snapped hard enough to crack a branch. The vortex surged. The circle trembled. McGonagall shouted Harry. Lupin's voice cut through sharply. Anchor Harry, Earth. Harry forced himself to breathe, except breathing wasn't breathing now. It was intention. He slammed his awareness down into the ground like dropping a stone into a river. Wait. Stone. Hogwarts beneath him like a nail in the land. The cuff burned warm. The circle steadied. The surge stopped. Harry's vortex tightened again, contained. The cold curiosity through the scar withdrew slightly, like something deciding to watch later. Harry didn't relax. He didn't dare. He focused on the final part of the test. Coming back. He drew inward. Wind slowed. Lightning dimmed. The vortex condensed, spiraling tighter and tighter. He could feel the temptation, how easy it would be to stay storm, to stay vast, to stay free. Being a boy was heavy. Being a storm was effortless. But then he felt something else outside the circle. Padfoot. A steady, fierce presence like a hand on his shoulder. Not words. Just come back. Harry clung to that. He compressed further. The vortex shrank. The lightning folded inward. Wind collapsed into a tight spiral. And then suddenly, he was dropping. Harry hit the ground on his knees inside the circle, human again, gasping like he'd been drowning, and finally reached air. His cloak slipped off one shoulder. His skin was cold and damp as if he'd been rain. The blue glow under his veins flickered faintly, then steadied. Harry trembled violently. But he was solid. He was here. For a second, nobody moved. Then Lupin was beside him, gripping his shoulders. You did it, Lupin breathed, voice shaking. McGonagall exhaled sharply like she'd been holding her breath since Harry stepped into the circle. Hagrid made a strangled sound that might have been a sob. Yeri, all right. Karzook nodded once, satisfied. Acceptable. Harry glared weakly. Acceptable? Karzook looked mildly amused. You did not scatter. That is acceptable. Harry tried to stand. His legs wobbled. The earth felt too heavy now, like he was suddenly aware of gravity's true opinion of him. Lupin steadied him. Dumbledore stepped forward, gaze intent. Harry. Harry looked up and saw McGonagall stiffen. Saw Lupin's eyes widen. Saw Hagrid freeze mid-relief. Harry frowned. What? Dumbledore's voice was very quiet. Your eyes. Harry's stomach dropped. He lifted a shaking hand and touched his face as if he could feel a change. He couldn't, but he saw it in their expressions. McGonagall whispered Merlin's mercy. Harry's voice cracked. What about my eyes? Dumbledore reached into his robe and pulled out a small silver mirror. He held it up. Harry looked, and his breath stopped. His eyes were no longer simply green. They were alive with movement. Gray mist swirled through his irises like storm clouds trapped behind glass. Not constantly, but subtly turning slow, spiraling patterns that shifted when he blinked. Harry stared at himself, horrified. He whispered, I didn't. Karzook cut in. It is the mark of altered nature. Harry's throat tightened. So I'm stuck like this? Dumbledore's gaze softened. For now. Harry swallowed hard, eyes burning. He didn't want to look like a monster. He didn't want to look like a warning sign. He wanted to look like himself. Lupin squeezed his shoulder gently. Harry, you're still you. Harry wanted to believe him. But he could still taste the storm. He could still feel the earth. In his eyes looked like the sky during a hurricane. McGonagall straightened, voice sharp with determination. He demonstrated control. That is the point of the test. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Yes. Karzook turned and walked to the edge of the clearing, pressing his palm to the ground again. The circle's glow faded, sinking back into soil. Then Karzook spoke without looking back. You're cleared by Earth. Harry blinked. Cleared by. Karzook's tone was flat. The Earth does not fear you. It will hold you. For now. Harry swallowed. That for now sat like a stone in his stomach. Dumbledore turned slightly, gaze moving past the trees. Harry followed his gaze and saw them. Figures at the far edge of the forest, partially hidden behind trunks and shadow. Not teachers. Not students. Men in dark cloaks with stiff posture. One of them held a wand at the ready. Another carried something like a parchment case. Ministry. Harry's stomach dropped. McGonagall's voice turned icy. They followed us. Dumbledore's expression was calm, too calm. They were already here. Harry's heart slammed against his ribs. What? Lupin's voice was low. Harry, the Ministry heard something. Harry whispered, how? McGonagall hissed, because windows exploded in Gryffindor Tower, and Hogwarts cannot sneeze without someone in London writing a report. Hagrid muttered, that's true. One of the Ministry figures stepped forward slightly. Moonlight caught his face. Cornelius Fudge. Harry recognized him, instantly bowler hat, anxious eyes, the look of a man who wanted everything to be fine without having to understand why it wasn't. Fudge's gaze fixed on Harry, then flicked to Harry's eyes, then to the scorched leaves in the clearing, then to the faint static still clinging to Harry's skin. Fudge swallowed visibly. Harry could practically hear the thought in Fudge's head. This is not a child. This is not a student. This is not something I can explain. Fudge's voice rang out, trying for authority and landing somewhere near panic. Albus. Dumbledore didn't move. Cornelius, Dumbledore called back pleasantly, like greeting a neighbor. Fudge took another step forward, then stopped as if the forest itself had told him not to come closer. What Fudge said, voice tight as that. Harry's stomach turned cold. He knew Fudge meant him. McGonagall stepped forward like a shield. Minister, you are trespassing on Hogwarts grounds. Fudge sputtered. Trespassing? Trespassing? There are reports of dangerous magic, unregistered transformations, unstable. Karzook's voice cut in, calm and sharp. Wizards panic like rabbits. Fudge snapped his gaze to the goblin and went pale. A goblin? Karzook looked bored. Yes. Try not to faint. Hagrid muttered he might. Lupin's hand tightened on Harry's shoulder. Harry, stay calm. Harry whispered, I am calm. And then his eyes flicked to the centaurs watching from deeper in the forest, to the spiders shifting far away. to the way the wind changed direction like it was listening to him. And Harry realized with sick clarity, if Fudge tried to take him, if the Ministry tried to cage him, the storm inside him would not react like a boy being threatened. It would react like a storm being challenged. Dumbledore stepped forward, voice gentle but absolute. Cornelius, Harry Potter remains a student of Hogwarts. He has demonstrated control. Fudge's voice rose. Control? That boy just turned into a weather event. McGonagall snapped. He turned back. Fudge's eyes darted to Harry's swirling gaze again, and fear tightened his face. That, Fudge said, voice trembling with forced certainty, is not normal magic. That is creature magic. Harry flinched. The words hit harder than any spell. Lupin's jaw clenched. McGonagall's eyes flashed like daggers. Dumbledore's expression didn't change, but the air around him grew subtly colder. Be careful, Cornelius, Dumbledore said softly. Words have consequences. Fudge swallowed. The Ministry will be informed. Dumbledore smiled faintly. The Ministry is standing in my forest. Fudge's face reddened. Albus. Dumbledore's voice remained calm. Harry Potter will remain under Hogwarts supervision. You may take your concerns back to London. Fudge looked like he wanted to argue. Then Harry's scar pulsed again. A cold buzz. A guide coming. And Harry felt it. Fudge's fear. Not just fear of danger. Fear of losing control. Fear of not being the one who decides what happens. And for a second, Harry understood something dark and adult. The Ministry didn't fear Voldemort because he was evil. The Ministry feared Voldemort because he was power that didn't ask permission. And now, they were looking at Harry the same way. Fudge backed up a half step, as if his body had decided the boy with storm eyes was too close. I'll be sending representatives, Fudge said stiffly, to ensure Hogwarts is not harboring. He hesitated, eyes flicking to Harry. Then he forced the word out like poison. A threat. Harry's fingers curled. The cuff warmed. The earth under his feet pressed steady like a hand saying hold. Harry did. Dumbledore's gaze stayed on Fudge. Good evening, Cornelius. It wasn't a dismissal. It was a door closing. Fudge hesitated, then turned sharply and retreated, his aurors following. The forest swallowed them. But the fear they left behind lingered like fog. McGonagall exhaled sharply, furious. He'll make this political. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Yes. Lupin whispered, Harry. Harry stared at the dark where Fudge had vanished. His eyes swirled faintly in the mirror's memory. His scar buzzed like a live wire. And somewhere far away, through that wire, Harry felt a colder curiosity deepen. Not the minister's. Voldemort's. As if the Dark Lord had just heard a rumor carried on storm wind and smiled in the dark. Harry whispered, voice barely audible, they're scared of me. Karzook's voice was blunt, as they should be. Harry's throat tightened. I don't want them to be. McGonagall's voice softened, fierce with protectiveness. Then we make sure they learn the difference between fear and truth. Dumbledore looked at Harry, eyes kind and heavy. They will not make it easy, Dumbledore said quietly. Harry swallowed. Neither will I. Thunder rumbled distantly. Not from the sky, from something deeper in the world. And Harry felt it answer him. Hogwarts didn't whisper anymore. It buzzed. Rumors moved through the castle the way electricity moved through copper fast, invisible, and always looking for something to ignite. Harry felt it everywhere. In the way conversations stopped when he entered a corridor. In the way first years stared like he was a story that had escaped a book. In a way older students pretended not to look, then looked anyway. And worst of all, in the way some people smiled too tightly, like they were trying to convince themselves they weren't afraid. Harry's eyes didn't help. The storm mist swirl in his irises wasn't dramatic. It wasn't glowing neon, or screaming monster. It was subtle gray movement behind green, like a cloudy sky behind glass. But people noticed. They always noticed. And the ministry noticed most of all. Dumbledore hadn't announced anything officially, of course. He never did if he could avoid it. He preferred secrets wrapped in kindness and plans hidden behind twinkling eyes. But after the midnight test in the Forbidden Forest, after Fudge had seen Harry's Tempest form, it was impossible to pretend nothing had changed. 2 extra Aurors arrived to assist with Demented security. A ministry official in a stiff robe started reviewing Hogwarts' safety protocols, and Daily Prophet owls began arriving with frightening speed, dropping newspapers like they were grenades. Hermione read them with fury. Ron read them with confusion. Harry tried not to read them at all, because the headlines were already sharpening their knives. Hogwarts hiding dangerous magic, boy WHO lived. Blessing or curse. Minister calls for oversight. Harry learned a new word. Oversight. It sounded like watching. It meant control. Scene 1. The permission slip that felt like a trap. Absolutely not. McGonagall's voice cracked through Harry's afternoon like a whip. Harry stood in her office with Lupin beside him, trying to look calm while his cuff warmed under his sleeve. I need to go, Harry said, forcing his voice to stay steady. McGonagall's nostrils flared. You are 13 years old and currently classified by the minister as a potential threat. You are not going to Hogsmeade. Harry's jaw clenched. I've always been a potential threat to the minister. Lupin coughed softly, half warning, half agreement. McGonagall shot Lupin a look. Do not encourage him. Harry's fingers curled, and the air in the office tightened faintly. McGonagall's gaze flicked to his hand. Harry forced himself to breathe. Wait. Earth. Control. The tightness eased. McGonagall's expression softened just a fraction, annoyingly maternal for someone who could turn to a cat. Mr. Potter, she said more quietly, Hogsmeade is not safe. Dementors patrol the village entrance. They are ministry creatures. If they sense me, Harry finished, voice tight. McGonagall didn't deny it. Harry's stomach twisted. I'm just banned from normal life now? Lupin's voice was gentle. Harry. Kari snapped. No, I'm sick of this. He took a breath, forcing his tone down. I don't want to be locked in a room and watched like I'm going to explode. McGonagall's eyes held his. Harry, I'm not your enemy. Harry swallowed hard. I know. He didn't feel like she was. But that didn't change the cage feeling around his life. McGonagall exhaled sharply, and her gaze slid toward the corner of her office where Dumbledore's portrait hung empty for the moment, as if even paintings knew when to avoid stress. She muttered, of course. Then she looked at Lupin. Remus. Lupin straightened. Yes, Minerva. McGonagall's voice was crisp. If and only if there is supervision. Harry's heart jumped. Supervision? McGonagall's eyes narrowed. You will not wander alone. You will not go near the village edge. You will not leave the main street. Harry opened his mouth. McGonagall raised a finger. And if your magic spikes even once, you return immediately. Understood? Harry swallowed. Understood. Lupin's shoulders loosened slightly. McGonagall looked directly at Harry. You are to remain a student first, Mr. Potter. Do not let them take that from you. Harry nodded, throat tight. McGonagall's voice hardened again because softness never stayed long with her. And Potter? Yeah? If you so much as sneeze. Harry grimaced. I won't. McGonagall's glare could have disciplined a hurricane. You will learn. Harry muttered, everyone keeps saying that. McGonagall leaned back in her chair, resigned. Fine, go. But if anything happens, you will answer to me. Harry almost smiled. Yes, Professor. As he turned to leave, Lupin's hand briefly touched his shoulder. Quiet, steady. A reminder, you're not doing this alone. Harry wished that was true, because even with supervision, Hogsmeade meant one thing. Dementors. And Dementors meant his worst memories. Scene 2. Hogsmeade and the Weight of Stairs. Hogsmeade should have felt like freedom. The first time Harry ever walked there, it had been magic made real shops, sweets, laughter, snow crunching under boots. A place where students could pretend war didn't exist. Now it felt like a stage. Harry walked down the road with Ron and Hermione beside him, Lupin a few paces behind, trying very hard to look casual, and an invisible shadow dogging the tree line that Harry could feel even when he couldn't see. Padfoot. The air was cold and bright. The village roofs were dusted with snow. Smoke curled from chimneys. Students surged around them, laughing and chattering. Then they noticed Harry. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was small. A glance here. A pause there. A whisper behind a hand. A wide-eyed first-year asking, "Is that him?" Hermione moved closer, like she could block the stairs with her body. Ron tried to look angry on Harry's behalf, but his anger kept slipping into confusion and unease because Ron didn't know how to react when his best mate started looking like Storm. "Mate," Ron muttered under his breath. "Why do they keep staring like you're going to do something?" Harry forced a shrug. "Maybe because I might." Ron blinked. "Don't say that." Hermione hissed, "Harry." Harry exhaled sharply. "Sorry. It was a joke. Mostly." They passed Honeydukes. The smell of sugar hit Harry like a punch, warm, sweet, normal. For a moment, he almost relaxed. Then a cold slid down his spine like fingers. Not wind. Not weather. Something else. Harry's steps slowed. Hermione noticed instantly. "Harry?" Harry's eyes flicked toward the village edge. Beyond the last row of buildings, dark figures moved, slowly gliding. Dementors. They hovered near the road like predators pretending to be guards. Harry's stomach tightened. He could feel them now in a way he hadn't before. Not just the cold. Not just the despair. He could feel their hunger, like a vacuum pressing against his soul. And he could feel something else too. They weren't simply patrolling. They were listening, searching, waiting. Ron followed Harry's gaze and went pale. "They're here." Harry swallowed. "Yeah." Hermione's voice was fierce. "Stay with us." Lupin's voice from behind them was calm but tight. "Ignore them. Keep walking. Don't look at them too long." Harry tried. He really tried. They turned into the main street, weaving between students and shop windows. For a few minutes, it worked. Harry even managed a small moment of normal Hermione dragging them into a shop to look at quills, Ron complaining about prices, Harry pretending he cared. Then the cold hit again. Harder. Deeper. The street sounds dimmed, as if the world was holding its breath. Harry's skin prickled. His cuff warmed suddenly like it sensed instability. He froze. Ron turned. "Harry?" Harry's scar pulsed. A sharp, irritated buzz like Voldemort stirring at the edge of a wire. And then Harry realized something that made his blood turn to ice. The Dementors weren't coming toward him from the edge. They were coming from above. Harry looked up and saw them. 3 Dementors gliding over the rooftops, robes trailing like spilled ink, moving straight toward him. Not patrolling. Hunting. Students screamed. Some ran. Some froze. Wands flashed Patronus charms, sputtering like weak candles in a storm. Silver mist formed and immediately died. The Dementors didn't even flinch. They drifted closer. Closer. Harry's lungs tightened. The world tilted toward darkness. He heard it. His mother screaming. His father shouting. A baby crying. His own baby self tiny, helpless. The cold pressed into him like hands. Harry's knees buckled, and the cuff burned hot, pulling him down, forcing weight into his body. Earth. Stone. Stay. Hermione grabbed his sleeve. "Harry, look at me, stay with me." Ron raised his wand with shaking hands. Expecto Patronum. A weak silver puff fluttered out and died. Ron's face crumpled with horror. I can't. Lupin stepped forward, wand raised. Expecto Patronum. A strong silver wolf burst from his wand, charging the nearest Dementor. The Dementor barely slowed. It recoiled an inch, then drifted forward again. Lupin's eyes widened. That wasn't supposed to happen. Patron uses were supposed to drive Dementors away. But these weren't reacting normally. They were ignoring everyone else. Because Harry was there. And Harry wasn't just a boy to them. He was a feast. The cold swallowed Harry's chest. His vision darkened. He felt himself starting to thin, fear loosening his shape. The storm inside him surged, desperate for escape. Harry's veins flashed blue. The air snapped. Hermione screamed, "Harry!" Harry heard her like she was far away underwater. The Dementors were close enough now that Harry could see the rotting hands beneath their sleeves. Close enough to smell the mold, wet stone, old death. One leaned down toward Harry, and Harry's mind snapped. Not into panic, into something colder, something older. A thought that wasn't words, but instinct. No, he wasn't prey. He wasn't helpless. He wasn't going to be eaten. And suddenly the world shifted. Because Harry stopped trying to defend himself like a human. He became the predator. Scene 3. The predator in the storm. Harry didn't raise a wand. He didn't speak a charm. He didn't summon a Patronus. He shifted. Not fully into Tempest form, because he was in the middle of Hogsmeade with students screaming and Lupin shouting and the Ministry waiting for an excuse to cage him. But partial. Controlled. Karzook's training snapped into place like a lock. Earth under his feet. Wait. Containment. And then, storm, sharpened. Harry's right arm blurred. Skin became mist. Mist became crackling blue-white plasma, like lightning held in a whip shape. The air around his arm screamed with charge. Students froze mid-run, staring like they just watched a boy turn into weather. The Dementor hovering closest hesitated. Hesitated, like it had finally realized something important. This wasn't normal prey. Harry's storm eyes narrowed. He felt the Dementor's hunger pressing at him. And he answered it with his own. Not hunger for souls. Hunger for balance. Hunger for survival. Harry lashed out. His plasma arm cracked through the air like a thunderclap. The whip struck the Dementor's chest. And for a single instant, Harry felt contact like touching a hole in the world. Cold. Empty. Wrong. Then the positive charge detonated. The Dementor didn't fly back. It didn't drift away. It didn't retreat. It vaporized. Not burned like paper. Not exploded like flesh. It simply ceased, ripped apart by the storm's pure, living force. A burst of bright static erupted in the air like a dying star. Then the cold pressure in the street eased slightly, as if the world had taken a breath. Silence hit hard. Harry stared, shocked. He hadn't expected that. He'd expected them to flee, to recoil, to hate the storm the way they hated patron uses. But this wasn't fear. This was destruction. Hermione's voice shook. Harry! Ron whispered, Mate, what did you just do? Harry didn't answer, because the other Dementors moved. Fast. Not gliding now. Surging. Two of them swept down toward him at once, robes flaring like wings. Harry's scar buzzed sharply, Voldemort's attention snapping awake. Harry felt that cold curiosity intensify through the wire, like Voldemort was leaning closer to watch. Harry's stomach twisted. No, not now. Not here. Harry slammed his awareness downward. Earth. The ground beneath him answered. Not with words. With weight. Harry's feet felt anchored like roots. He lifted his plasma arm again. And this time, he didn't swing blindly. He moved like a storm with intention. He lashed once at the first Dementor. The whip struck. A flash. A crack. The Dementor tore apart into black vapor that dissolved into nothing. The second Dementor tried to veer away, and Harry's storm reacted instinctively. Wind surged around his body, pulling oxygen like a tide. The air became thin, sharp. The Dementor's robe fluttered as if caught in an invisible gale. Harry snapped the plasma whip again. Another thunder crack. Another burst of bright static. Another Dementor ceased to exist. The street's cold collapsed like a broken spell. Students collapsed too, some crying, some gasping, some staring at Harry like he'd become a legend and a nightmare in one moment. Lupin lowered his wand slowly, eyes wide with shock. Hermione was staring at Harry's arm, still half plasma, crackling softly. Ron's mouth hung open. Harry's breathing was ragged. He could feel the storm pushing outward, thrilled, hungry for more. It wanted to chase, to hunt, to clear the sky of shadows. Harry clenched his jaw and forced himself to stay heavy. Stay grounded. Stay human. His arm shuddered, misting slightly, then condensed back into flesh. Normal skin. Normal fingers. But his veins still glowed faintly, and the air around him still tasted like lightning. Harry looked around. The street was wrecked, snow scattered, shop signs swinging, bits of shattered glass from a window where the shockwave had hit. People stared. A Ravenclaw girl was sobbing, repeating, "They're gone. They're gone." A Hufflepuff boy looked like he might throw up. Then Harry heard the sound he'd been dreading. Boots. Hard, purposeful steps. Aurors pushing through the crowd. Ministry officials with grim faces and wands drawn. And behind them, Cornelius Fudge. His bowler hat was crooked. His face was pale. His eyes locked on Harry like Harry was a bomb that had just gone off. Fudge's voice was shaking with rage and fear. "Potter." Harry's stomach dropped. Hermione grabbed his sleeve again. "Harry, don't." Ron whispered, "Oh no." Lupin stepped forward quickly, voice sharp. "Minister, this is not the time." Fudge shoved past Lupin like Lupin wasn't even there. He stared at the empty air where Dementors had been. Then he stared at Harry's face. At Harry's eyes. At Harry's cuff. Then he swallowed hard and said the words that made Harry's blood go cold. "You destroyed Ministry property." Harry blinked. "They tried to eat me." Fudge's voice rose. "They were maintaining security." Harry snapped, "By hunting me?" The crowd murmured. Students whispered. Aurors shifted uneasily. Fudge's eyes darted around, as if suddenly aware he was being watched by Hogwarts students, by teachers, by the village, by the truth. Fudge's voice lowered, trembling. "This is exactly what I feared." McGonagall wasn't there. Dumbledore wasn't there. It was just Lupin braced like a shield and Harry standing in the street with storm eyes and a dangerous reputation forming around him like a cloak. Fudge pointed his wand at Harry. Harry's cuff warmed sharply. The earth under his feet pressed steady. Lupin's voice was deadly calm. "Minister, lower your wand." Fudge ignored him. "You're not in control, Potter." Harry's jaw clenched. The storm inside him snarled at the wand pointed at him. For a split second, Harry felt the temptation. Take the wand apart. Turn it to ash. Show him what control really looks like. His scar buzzed. Cold curiosity through the wire. Like Voldemort enjoying the thought. Harry's stomach twisted in disgust. "No." Harry forced his gaze away from Fudge's wand. He breathed like a mountain. He pressed down into earth. His cuff hummed. The storm settled angry, but contained. Harry's voice came out low and tight. "I didn't choose this." Fudge's eyes narrowed. "But you will be held accountable for it." Lupin stepped fully between them. "Cornelius, enough." Fudge's voice was sharp. "This is beyond Hogwarts." Lupin's eyes flashed. "This is a child." Fudge spat. "That is not a child." "That is." He hesitated, and everyone leaned into the silence. Then Fudge forced the word out like a curse. A creature. Hermione made a sound like she'd been punched. Ron's face went red with anger. Shut up. Harry flinched anyway, because it was the same word as before. The same accusation. And it was spreading. Fudge's wand hand trembled slightly. Aurors, take him. The Aurors hesitated. Not because they didn't follow orders. Because they had seen what Harry had just done. And they weren't sure a wand could stop a storm. Then a voice cut through the tension like a bell. That will not be necessary. Dumbledore's voice. The crowd parted as if the air itself moved them. Dumbledore walked forward, calm as ever, eyes bright and dangerous in their kindness. Beside him was McGonagall, face like carved ice. Behind them, unseen by most, Padfoot moved at the edge of the street, black fur blending into shadows, ready to tear out someone's throat if they touched Harry. Dumbledore's gaze met Fudge's. Cornelius. Fudge's face tightened. Albus. Dumbledore looked at the empty air where the Dementors had been. A regrettable incident. Fudge snapped. Regrettable? He destroyed them. Dumbledore's voice was gentle. Indeed. Fudge's voice rose. Do you understand what that means? Dementors cannot be harmed by normal means. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled coldly. Harry Potter has never been normal means. McGonagall's voice cut sharp. Minister, your Dementors attacked a student under Hogwarts supervision. That is the true scandal. The crowd murmured louder now. Fudge looked trapped between fear and politics. Dumbledore stepped closer, voice soft but absolute. Harry will return to Hogwarts. Immediately. Fudge's jaw clenched. I will not allow. Dumbledore's smile vanished. The air around him seemed to settle. Even Harry felt it, the weight of Dumbledore's power pressing down like gravity, deciding it wanted to be respected. You will allow it, Dumbledore said quietly. Fudge swallowed. His wand lowered an inch. Dumbledore turned slightly, looking at Harry with gentle focus. Harry. Harry's throat tight. Yeah? Dumbledore's voice was kind. Cool me. Harry took a step. The crowd parted again. Some students stared with awe. Some with fear. Some with something uglier judgment. Harry felt Hermione press close on one side, Ron on the other. Lupin walked just behind, tense. McGonagall's gaze swept the crowd like a warning. Say one more word and see what happens. Padfoot followed at a distance, invisible to most eyes, but not to Harry's awareness. As they walked away, Harry heard whispers. He killed them. He saved us. He's dangerous. He's a monster. Harry clenched his fists. The cuff warmed. He breathed. Earth. Wait. He kept walking. Scene 4. Aftershock. Back at Hogwarts, they didn't take Harry to the Great Hall. They took him straight to the containment room. Pomfrey fussed, furious, checking Harry's pulse like she could wring the storm out of his veins by force. McGonagall argued in sharp, furious bursts with Dumbledore about ministry overreach and irresponsible Dementor deployment. Lupin sat near Harry's bed, quiet, watching him like he might fall apart again. Hermione came to, briefly, eyes bright with anger and worry. Harry, you did nothing wrong. Ron looked torn between pride and fear. Mate, that was mental. Harry stared at his hands. Normal. Too normal. He could still feel the moment the Dementor ceased. He could still feel how easy it had been to destroy something that was supposed to be untouchable. And he could still feel the storm inside him wanting more. Harry whispered, they weren't supposed to die. Lupin's voice was rough. They're not alive in the way we are. Harry shook his head. Still. Hermione's voice was fierce. They attacked you. Harry's eyes lifted. The mist swirled faintly in his irises. And if it happens again, Harry said quietly, I'll do it again. Silence fell, because that sounded like certainty. And certainty was what people feared most. Dumbledore arrived later, alone. He stood in the doorway of the containment room, framed by stone and runes and the weight of old magic. Harry looked up. Fudge is going to make noise, Dumbledore finished calmly. He will demand oversight. He will whisper creature to the prophet. He will attempt to build a cage out of laws. Harry swallowed hard. Can he? Dumbledore's eyes softened. Not while you remain under Hogwarts protection. Harry's voice was bitter. So I'm safe as long as I stay in the castle. Dumbledore didn't argue. Because that was the truth. Harry whispered, that's not safety. That's a prison. Dumbledore was quiet for a long moment. Then he said gently, it is a fortress. Harry's jaw clenched. Same thing. Dumbledore stepped closer, voice low. Harry, what you did today, destroying Dementors, will change the natural order of magical creatures. Harry frowned. Natural order? Dumbledore's eyes sharpened. Dementors have always been predators. Wizards have always been their prey, forced to repel them, but never truly harm them. Harry's cuff hummed faintly, as if agreeing. Dumbledore continued. Today they learned something. Harry swallowed. What? Dumbledore's voice was quiet. That you're not prey. Harry's scar buzzed again, cold attention through the wire, like someone savoring the idea. Voldemort. Harry's stomach twisted, and Voldemort learned it too. Dumbledore's gaze went very still. Yes. Harry looked down his wrist cuff, at the runes carved deep, at the idea of Earth holding storm. Harry whispered, he's going to come for me. Dumbledore didn't deny it. No, Dumbledore said softly. He is going to come for what you represent. Harry's throat tightened. A weapon. Dumbledore's eyes held his steady, stubbornly kind. A choice. Harry stared. Dumbledore's voice was gentle but firm. You are not defined by what you can destroy, Harry. Harry's laugh was quiet and hollow. Tell that to the Dementors. Dumbledore's gaze didn't waver. Then we will teach you how to build as well. Harry blinked. Build? Dumbledore's smile returned faintly. Storms do not only destroy. They bring rain. They balance heat. They cleanse stale air. Harry stared at him. It was the first time anyone had suggested his power could be more than violence. Harry whispered, I don't know how. Dumbledore's voice softened. We will learn. A pause. Then Dumbledore added quietly, and Harry, there is something you must understand. Harry swallowed. What? Dumbledore's eyes sharpened with grave clarity. The world will try to make you choose between being a boy and being a storm. Harry's fingers clenched. The cuff warmed. Dumbledore continued, do not let them convince you those are your only options. Harry stared at his hands again, at the faint blue glow beneath his skin, at the memory of being vast. And somewhere far away, thunder rumbled low not in the sky, but in his bones. Harry whispered, I'm scared of what I liked. Dumbledore's gaze softened. That fear is part of your humanity. Harry swallowed hard. Outside the containment room, Hogwarts creaked like an old guardian shifting its weight. And beyond the castle, in London, in offices filled with parchment and panic, Harry could almost feel laws being sharpened like knives. And farther still, through the wire in his scar, a cold mind watched, curious, hungry, and suddenly very interested in storms. The Daily Prophet didn't report news. It manufactured weather. If it wanted sunshine, it printed heroes. If it wanted storms, it printed monsters. And now it had found the perfect storm. Harry Potter. The morning after Hogsmeade, the owls arrived in a swarm so thick the Great Hall looked like it was being invaded by angry paper birds. Feathers filled the air. Letters smacked plates. Newspapers slapped onto tables like accusations. Students grabbed headlines with the hungry excitement of people who weren't the ones being eaten alive by them. Hermione snatched the first paper before Ron could even reach it. Harry didn't. He already knew. The prophet always found a way. Hermione's face drained of color as she read. then flushed red with rage. Ron frowned. What? What's it say? Hermione's voice shook. It's vial. She turned the paper so Ron could see. Harry didn't look. He didn't have to. He could hear the words in Hermione's tone, could feel the shift in the room as students began whispering loudly enough to be heard. Lavender Brown gasped. Seamus muttered, "What the—" A Slytherin laughed. Harry's jaw tightened. Hermione read out loud, voice trembling with fury because she could not. Boy WHO lived, or boy WHO loses control. Ministry sources confirm Harry Potter destroyed Dementors in Hogsmeade in what witnesses describe as a violent burst of unstable magic. Experts warn Potter may represent a new class of dark creature. Ron exploded. Dark creature? Hermione's eyes flashed. It gets worse. Harry's fingers curled under the table. The cuff warmed beneath his sleeve like a warning. He forced himself to breathe. Earth, wait, don't react. Hermione continued, voice sharp as knives. They're calling you the Tempest Boy, and there's a quote, listen to this. She lifted the paper, reading with disgust. If the Dementor's creatures feared even by trained aurors can be destroyed by Potter, what else can he destroy? And will he stop at enemies? Ron shoved his chair back hard enough to screech. That's it. I'm going to write to my mom and tell her to. Hermione grabbed his sleeve. Ron. Harry finally spoke, voice low. Don't. Ron turned. Don't? Harry there. I said don't. Harry repeated, calmer than he felt. It's what they want. Panic. More drama. Hermione stared at him. Harry, are you okay? Harry looked down at his toast like it might give him answers. I'm fine, he lied. His scar pulsed faintly, like Voldemort was amused by the lie. Harry's eyes flicked upward. Across the hall, students were staring. Some were afraid. Some were curious. And some were looking at him like he'd betrayed the idea of Harry Potter they'd built in their heads. Like he was no longer their safe story. Like he was something messy and real and dangerous. Harry hated that look most of all. He stood abruptly. The bench shifted slightly, a faint crackle in the air as the metal reacted to him. Hermione flinched. Ron's eyes widened. Harry forced stillness. Where are you going? Hermione asked quickly. Harry's voice was flat. Not here. And he walked out. Scene 1. The castle feels smaller. The corridors felt narrower than they used to. Or maybe Harry's awareness made them feel that way. He could sense the castle's wards like pressure lines in the air. He could feel stone under stone. He could feel the subtle hum of magic in tapestries, suits of armor, staircases that shifted because they liked causing problems. But now he could also feel people. Not their minds, not thoughts, but their presence. Warm bodies in halls, each one carrying emotion like scent. Fear smelled like cold metal. Curiosity smelled like sharp ink. Disgust smelled like sour smoke. Harry passed a group of Ravenclaws. One of them whispered, not quietly enough, that's him. Harry kept walking. 2 Hufflepuff girls stepped aside like he was contagious. Harry kept walking. A Slytherin boy smirked and muttered, careful, he'll evaporate you. Harry kept walking. His cuff warmed. He pressed his awareness down. Earth. Wait. Control. But control didn't stop the loneliness from crawling under his ribs. He found an empty corridor near an unused classroom and leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Not from running. From holding himself still. Because part of him, the storm part, wanted to react. To lash out. To prove he wasn't weak. To show them what a dark creature really looked like. And that thought made him sick. Because it sounded too much like Voldemort. Harry pressed his forehead against the cold stone. Not me, he whispered. The stone under his skin felt steady. A faint comfort. Then a familiar voice spoke behind him. Harry. Hermione. Harry didn't turn. Go away. Hermione's footsteps stopped a few feet away. No. Harry exhaled sharply. Hermione. I said no. Hermione repeated, tone firm. You don't get to disappear. Harry laughed once, bitter. Disappearing is literally something I can do now. Hermione stepped closer anyway. Then don't. Harry turned his head slightly. Hermione's expression was furious at the paper, at the world, at the unfairness. But her eyes were also scared. Not scared of Harry. Scared for him. Harry's throat tightened. Hermione spoke, voice lower. Ron's trying. He just doesn't know how to handle this. Harry's jaw clenched. Neither do I. Hermione nodded. Then let's figure it out. Harry stared at her. And suddenly he wanted to say everything: the fear, the temptation, the way being a storm felt like freedom, and the way that freedom felt like a trap. But instead he said the only thing that felt safe. I need answers. Hermione's eyes sharpened. From where? Harry looked up the corridor toward the staircase that led to the library. Old books, Harry said, on elemental magic, bloodlines, anything. Hermione blinked. Harry, those are restricted. Harry's storm eyes narrowed faintly. So? Hermione stared at him. And she sighed like the universe was exhausting. Fine, but if you do something reckless, I'm allowed to yell at you. Harry's lips twitched faintly. You do that anyway. Hermione glared. Correct. They walked together toward the library. And Harry realized, with a twist in his gut, that Hermione had chosen him in that moment. Chosen him over fear. But would Ron? Would anyone else? Harry didn't know. And that uncertainty sat heavy. Scene 2. Walking through locks. Madame Pance's library was a temple of silence. She patrolled it like a dragon guarding treasure, except dragons were probably easier to negotiate with. Harry and Hermione entered quietly. Hermione immediately grabbed a stack of books like she was preparing for war. Harry just stood there for a moment, feeling the air. The library had layers of warding light, careful enchantments meant to protect books, stop theft, silence noise. Harry could feel them like spiderwebs. And in the far corner, behind a tall, iron gate, the restricted section waited like a forbidden mouth. Hermione followed his gaze and stiffened. No, Hermione hissed. Harry blinked. No. Hermione lowered her voice. Absolutely not. Harry stared. Hermione. That section is restricted for a reason, Hermione snapped. It's cursed books, dangerous texts. Harry's voice was low. And answers. Hermione's eyes flashed. Harry, you can't just walk in there. Harry's mouth twitched humorlessly. Actually, Hermione's eyes widened slightly, dread sinking in. Harry looked at the gate. It was locked with heavy iron, warded, charms layered on top of charms. It was designed to stop normal students. Harry wasn't normal anymore. He closed his eyes. Breathed. Earth. Wait. And he did the opposite. He let go of the weight just enough. Not fully. Just enough to loosen. His skin tingled. The air around his shoulders softened. Hermione whispered, horrified, Harry, what are you doing? Harry opened his eyes. And then he stepped forward. His body didn't bump into the gate. It passed. Like the iron bars were only bars for solid things. Harry became mist-thin, controlled, sliding between metal without resistance. It didn't feel like magic. It felt like physics with different rules. He reformed on the other side, solid again, breathing hard, cuff humming as it dragged him back into weight. Hermione stared through the bars, mouth open. Harry whispered, see? Hermione's voice came out strangled. That is the most illegal thing I have ever witnessed. Harry blinked. You stole polyjuice ingredients in second year. Hermione's face flushed. That was different. Harry's eyes narrowed. How? Hermione sputtered, then shut her mouth, because there wasn't a good answer. Harry gestured. Are you coming? Hermione stared at the gate, then at Harry. She looked like she was mentally arguing with her own morals. Then she whispered, furious and resigned, I hate you for making this logical. Harry waited. Hermione hissed, "Stay there." She pulled out her wand, muttered a charm under her breath, and the lock clicked open with a soft snick. The gate swung inward. Harry blinked. "You can pick that lock." Hermione glared. "Yes, Harry. That's why I told you didn't need to become mist." Harry muttered. It was faster. Hermione's eyes flashed. It was dramatic. Harry almost smiled. Almost. They stepped into the restricted section. The air felt colder. Not like Dementors. Like old secrets. Books sat on shelves that seemed too tall, too dark. Some were chained. Some whispered faintly. One book twitched like a sleeping animal. Hermione shuddered. "This place is awful." Harry's gaze moved across titles. Infernal Contracts, Necromantic Principles, Bloodline Geometry. Pre-wand Sorcery, The Untamed Age. Harry's heartbeat quickened. He reached for the last one. The moment his fingers touched the spine, the book hummed. Not angry. Recognizing. Harry swallowed. Hermione whispered, "Harry." Harry pulled it free. It didn't bite him. That felt like a win. They carried it to a desk near the back, away from Madame Pance's line of sight. Harry opened it. The pages smelled like dust and old storms. Hermione leaned in, eyes scanning. The book was written in dense, archaic language, but Hermione's brain attacked it like a predator. "Okay," Hermione whispered, finger tracing lines. "This is about pre-wand magic." Harry's eyes flicked over diagrams, humans with lines drawn from their bodies into the ground, into the sky, into rivers, into fire. It looked like someone had mapped their souls to the world. Hermione whispered, "It says early sorcerers didn't cast spells. They negotiated with forces." Harry's stomach tightened. "Like Karzuk." Hermione nodded slowly. "Yes, it talks about pacts with elements, but not like summoning spirits." Harry's eyes narrowed. "Then what?" Hermione's finger paused on a paragraph. Her breath caught. "Harry," Hermione whispered. "What?" Hermione's voice went very quiet. "It mentions the Peveril name." Harry froze. "The Peverils?" He whispered. "Like the Deathly Hallows Peverils?" Hermione nodded, eyes wide. "Yes." Harry leaned closer as Hermione read. The House of Peveril, known in later ages for its association with death, was first recorded as a lineage of elemental catalysts, stormbinders, and stone anchors who commanded the weather of battlefields and the stability of fortresses. Harry's blood turned cold. Stormbinders. Stone anchors. He swallowed hard. Hermione's eyes flicked to Harry's cuff. "That's literally you." Harry whispered, "But the Peverils were old." Hermione nodded slowly. "It says the death association came later after wands made magic smaller. People started fearing what they couldn't control." Harry's scar pulsed faintly. Harry whispered, "So, my family?" Hermione hesitated. "Harry, you're connected to the Peverils through something, maybe through bloodline inheritance or magical resonance." Harry stared at the page. The words blurred. He felt something deep and ancient in his bones answer to the name. Stormbinder. Stone anchor. Catalyst. Harry swallowed hard. "It's real." Hermione's voice trembled. "Harry, there's more." Harry looked up. "What?" Hermione pointed to another section. This part was darker. The ink looked thicker, like it had been written with stronger intention. Hermione read quietly. "In rare instances, a catalyst may fracture the vessel of the human soul, becoming unbound. Such beings are no longer limited by focus tools, wands, as their core acts as focus. Their danger lies not in malice, but in scale. Their power may devour lesser enchantments as flame devours paper." Harry's stomach turned. Hermione whispered, "Devour enchantments." Harry looked down his wrist cuff. "Like me," Harry said quietly. Hermione nodded, eyes shining with fear and determination. "But listen, there's a warning." Harry's throat tightened. Of course there is. Hermione read. The unbound catalyst risks losing the human mask. The storm is simpler than the boy. The earth is calmer than the heart. Without anchor love, oath, or chosen bond, the catalyst becomes pure force, a natural disaster that cannot remember why it once cared. Hermione's voice broke on the last word. Harry stared at the page. His chest felt hollow, because he had felt that temptation already. Being Storm was easy. Being boy was hard. Harry whispered, so I have to stay human. Hermione's voice was fierce. Yes. Harry's scar buzzed faintly, cold curiosity, as if Voldemort found the idea amusing. Harry's jaw clenched. Hermione's finger moved again, scanning further. Then she froze. Harry, she whispered, voice tight. What? Hermione's eyes were wide. It says some catalysts were called primordial. Harry's stomach dropped. Primordial? Hermione nodded slowly. It says there are different types: fire, water, earth, storm. Harry swallowed. Hermione's voice lowered further. And it says primordial catalysts are rare. Harry whispered, because they're dangerous. Hermione's face went pale. Because they're closer to creation magic. Harry's breath caught. Creation. Dumbledore's words echoed, not love creation. Hermione's finger trembled slightly as she traced the line that made Harry's blood run cold. The primordial is not merely one element, but the hinge between them. A storm that carries earth. A stone that remembers lightning. A catalyst that can reshape the laws of lesser magic. Harry stared. Hinge between them. Storm and earth. That was him. Harry whispered, so I'm not just Storm. Hermione's voice shook. No. Harry swallowed hard. Then what am I? Hermione looked at him, anger and fear and loyalty fighting in her eyes. You're Harry, Hermione said fiercely. And you're something the wizarding world forgot existed. Harry's throat tightened. Then a cold voice drifted behind them. Forgot? Hardly. Hottie Spawn. Hermione jolted upright. Between two shelves stood Draco Malfoy, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle like human walls. Draco's pale face was smug, but his eyes flicked nervously to Harry's swirling gaze. He swallowed, then forced his smirk back into place. What are you doing in here, Potter? Draco drawled. Breaking laws again? Hermione snapped. Malfoy, get out. Draco ignored her, gaze fixed on Harry. My father said the ministry's frightened of you. Harry's cuff warmed faintly. Harry's voice was low. Good. Draco flinched, just a tiny twitch, then recovered. Draco sneered, voice sharp. They should be. You're not normal. Hermione hissed, neither are you. Draco's eyes glittered. At least I'm not a thing. Harry's stomach turned cold. There was again. That word. Thing. Creature. Monster. Harry felt the storm inside him shift, restless, angry. He tasted metal. The air tightened. The books around them rustled faintly, like they sensed tension. Hermione stepped in front of Harry instinctively. Draco's eyes widened. Oh, what, Granger? Are you protecting your pet Storm? Ron's voice boomed from the aisle behind Draco. What did you just say? Dracospawn. Ron stood there, red-faced, wand raised. Harry's chest tightened relief and dread at the same time. Hermione whispered sharply, Ron no. Ron snarled, get away from them, Malfoy. Crabbe and Goyle shifted, cracking knuckles like they'd found an excuse. Draco smirked. Look at you, playing hero. For that. Harry felt the storm inside him surge. A flash of the plasma whip in his mind. A memory of Dementors vaporizing. Harry's scar buzzed cold, curiosity sharpening. Harry forced himself to breathe. Earth. Wait. Anchor. He wouldn't give Draco the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. Harry stepped forward, voice calm in a way that scared even him. Draco, Harry said quietly, if you don't leave right now, you'll regret it. Draco's smirk wavered. Because Harry's voice wasn't angry. It was certain. Draco backed up half a step, then snapped, "You don't scare me." Harry's eyes swirled.